Good evening, Mr. Stern. Are you able to see the agenda on the screen?
I am, and thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the regular school board meeting of January 25th to order at 7:02 p.m. Roll call, Mrs. Pertinio.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Present.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Mr. Belts
Mr.
had, excuse me, Mr. Belts
Yeah.
had surgery over the weekend for his shoulder, and he mentioned that he would like us to know that he will not be attending this evening.
thank you. Mr. David Bradley,
Here.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Here.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Here.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik, Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
She was in the executive session, and she was having trouble that apparently you guys wouldn't let her microphone to work or wouldn't open her microphone for her to be able to speak. But she should be attending. I know that she was aware of the meeting.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Here,
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Here.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Present. I'd like to give notice of an executive session today at 6:15 p.m. Concerning contract negotiations. Mr. Cleaver, I believe you have the floor. Thank you.
Presentation recognitions. I just wanted to bring everyone up to date that this month, the month of January, we always take time to publicly recognize and thank the men and women of our community who have served in school board capacity, both past and present. Please know that our achievements would not have been possible without you and everyone who has served as a board member at the helm. Our school board is a strong advocate for public schools and is responsible for communicating the needs of school district to the public and to the public's expectations of the district. These individuals have committed themselves to this duty by governing school districts and advancing achievement in all of our schools. They spend time volunteering with countless hours in an effort to meet the needs of the entire district and the Lehighton community, and make 100% of their decisions based upon what they feel is the best interest of our children and families of our school community. So I just wanted to thank and publicly recognize all the school boards, past and present, for the Lehighton School District and across the state of Pennsylvania. So thank you very much. If we could have a round of applause for our school board members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cleaver. We'll move on to public comment on agenda. Ms. Pertinio.
I have one, if you get a chance.
We do have two requests. One from Ms. Bowes. It's okay, Mr. Bradley, if I go to Ms. Bowes first, as she.
Of course, we're here to serve them, so let them speak first.
Ms. Bowes?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I had some questions on Willow, the payment of bills. I noticed in the December payment of bills, there were fees being paid for the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees. 7 of the people on there are current employees. 2 I could not find had an email on the site. I had a question on why we are paying fees to particular association current employees.
I would have to double check. I do know if you're going just based upon the email addresses listed on the school district website, many of them have just not been removed, if that's what you're referencing.
Okay, well, there's Sue Cup, Sherry Armbruster, Carrie Kunkel, Ann Louise Hayes, Deborah Lilly, Kristen Simmons, and Blaine Klotz. I could
Many of
not
them
find,
just sent their retirement letter for December 31st.
okay, and the other thing is, why do we pay those fees even for retired people? It's an association for retirees. I mean, that's just my question. I don't
Right, no,
understand why we would be paying them.
the PSERS statement, that is, the PSERS is their retirement, that the district is responsible to pay part of their PSERS payment for them. So based upon when they're retired, that is when that payment would be finalized. So if we send a district-wide payment in November, there would still be an amount be required to once those individuals retire in December.
And this is for the Pennsylvania,
Yeah, education retirement system that they have. PSERS is what they call it, but there is also PSEA dues, which the individual pays. We do not pay those as a district.
okay, because this came up as PASR, not PSERS.
Right, that's the retirement program. Yep,
Okay, so we are responsible for that.
yep. Depending on when they retire and from our last payment, there's most likely an amount allocated for those individuals.
Okay, that was my first question. You may not have had time to get this information together, but I was wondering what the total was paid to cyber charter schools during December and January. And have we paid anything to the IU where we're supposed to be paying them $1,000 per student that's attending cyber with them?
I believe turn it over to Mr. Rarick for the cyber cost first, for the cyber schools.
Yeah, I didn't have time to compile that information real quick since we got your email, but we'll certainly get that information to you. A rough figure, just looking at it real quick, it was over $300,000 for December and January, but we could give you more definitive information once I have a better chance to look at it.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have time to do it. I think it was around 317,000, but I didn't know if it may have been more because I didn't have time to double check it. And I didn't know if we have been billed by the IU. I know at some point we had 180 students attending at $1,000 per student. And I didn't know if we've been billed for that. Have we paid it?
As far as the billing is based upon a half year, because with the school district, high school being block scheduling. So I would imagine that payment you'll see in the next month. And also part of that cost is based upon the students needing equipment. And if the students did not need equipment, that cost would be a little less as well, but we could get you.
Well, that was the $75, that equipment would have been the $75 to rent.
Well, no, because there's a router, there's also an internet fee, it's not just a computer, there's much more to it than that, but we could get a breakdown and get that to you, Ms. Bose.
Okay, I didn't see a payment to Penn Teledata for January. Is that because we are doing a new contract with them? I saw one for December. And it was 1,330 and change, I believe. And I looked over the contract and it looks like they are dropping that down to 978 per month. For, I think it's a 5-year period for the contract in front of me. But should there not have been a payment included for January in the payment of bills?
It may be that their payment did come to us after the board packets were prepared and those bills were listed.
Okay. On the report section, tax assessment and collection, $39,000 was budgeted, but 92,000 was expensed at 237.86% used. 67,000 in salaries, but 0 was budgeted. Why don't we budget for this each year? Hello?
Yeah, Ms. Bose, I'm not I'd have to look and see what you're actually referring to, but I will tell you that some of the budgeted areas we have been, have to move around since, now that Mr. Rarick's in here and looking at it to make sure that they are properly placed in the right account and right function.
It was the same last year. It was not budgeted for.
Yeah, I cannot speak for that, I'm sorry.
Okay, and there's no treasurer's report again. Are we gonna start seeing them?
Mr. Cleaver, if I may, I would like to explain to Ms. Bose that today I did go into the business office and I met with Mr. Rarick. I reviewed the bills. I looked at every item on the check register and the accompanying documents. I asked for a few clarifications and received my answers. There are 2 months of check runs on the agenda for this evening, which you referred to. I did review a payroll run, and I assured that everyone on the list was indeed a district employee. I also reviewed insurance payments and verified that retiree co-payments were being received. I had a discussion with Mr. Rarick and Ms. Karpowitz on their continuing efforts to make the reports generated by the business office better match the check register dates. After all that, I have every reason to believe that the bills we are approving this evening are correct. Now, you certainly can disagree with that, and I'm sure some people will, but I just want everyone to know that I did go through everything physically today and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, because that's more than other treasurers seem to have done. One thing I noticed, and I did email Mr. Rarick yesterday on this, the budget reports are over $1 million higher for expenditures than what the board approved for payments. I asked him for clarification on this. I don't know if mistakes were made or if this is just what happened, but I would like to understand that better and why this occurs. And this started with the very first budget report. And by the second budget report, Mr. Rarick was not there at the time. It was over $900,000 difference. Now in the policies, I wanted to ask about that. There are links in the agenda to the policies, but it is not clear when you go to those links what is being changed. And there was no explanation on how to know that. Can someone explain to me, is there, if anything was changed, is it notated in those when you look at them on the policies on the internet? Previously, they were included in the reports and it was made clear what was being changed in the policies.
And Ms. Bowes, this is Larry. I can answer that for you. The first readings, when they're published, the addendums and changes are highlighted within the document. But since this is the second reading and the final reading, those edits and annotations are removed because these are going to be then placed into the policy for the district without those annotations.
Okay, so then on the first readings, we would receive it how we did last time, as separate, you know, as one big document, but with the different policies where everything was annotated?
Correct.
Okay. That was my other question because I hadn't seen it done like that before and I wanted to know why.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Mr. Cleaver, may I also say one other thing here? I just want everyone to remember that this is a meeting of the Lehighton Area School District Board of Directors, as I stated previously. The public has the right to attend and comment on the agenda before the meeting. We also provide some time for comments after the meeting, and we do welcome your participation. However, this is not a town hall where the public goes back and forth with each other or with board members. That is our policy, and it is supported by the Sunshine Act. We have a 3-minute time spot for each speaker, and while we can be lenient with that time, that will take place at the board's discretion. Please respect the attempt by this board to continue taking steps to improve our financial position, pursue our educational goals, and do it with the attention public education deserves. Thank you Thank you in advance for your participation and your cooperation with this.
Thank you, Ms. Benelli. Mr. Stern, Ms. Bowman
Yes.
had the request. Ms. Bowman?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on page 7, letter D, and I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate and thank both Mrs. Kresley and Mrs. Dillman for their dedicated service to our students. I've had such a tremendous pleasure working with them, and they were truly a team. They were team players. They worked in sync to better educate our students, and they were always there for them and went out of their way to do extra things and so on with the students. And I wish them all well in their retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Okay. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to make a statement that the board has still allowed the administration to be delinquent in providing the board with the information required for making informed decisions in a timely fashion. We're seeing some of these documents on the Thursday before the meeting. We were supposed to see them in 5 business days before the meeting so that people can review this information prior to coming to this meeting. That should be changed. As far as the lack of treasurer's report, that is also a delinquency that we need to correct. Apparently, Rita just announced that she went into the business office, so I was just going to ask Mr. Rarig a couple quick questions. Ed, sorry. How long did that review take? And were you there for the entire review?
Yes, I was here for the entire review. Approximately an hour and a half.
1 to 2 hours? Were any special safety precautions provided so that she could do this review?
Normal protocol as followed by CDC, wearing a mask and social distancing.
Anything other than those two?
No.
I've attempted to make that same appointment. Is there special privileges provided to Rita for making that opportunity to review these documents? I have been declined so far.
I did it as the treasurer, Mr. Bradley, because the public had commented that they wanted more oversight, and that's why I did it.
Yeah, and yet we have millions of dollars being consumed. You say you reviewed it, and you also reviewed that each employee was a member of the district as an employee. What list did you use to verify that, and where was it provided by, Rita?
The list I used was the list that lists all the teachers that work in the district. I got some of that online. I got some of that from Mr. Cleaver, some of that from the payroll department. And I looked at the payroll to make sure everyone on there was actually an employee of the district.
And that was just the teachers or also the other associated
The
support staff?
the others also, the whole entire payroll.
And you checked that payroll in relationship to the hours that they worked or the salary contract that they had?
No, I did not, Mr. Bradley. I
Did you
checked
check
to
it?
make sure they were all employees because their contracts are definitely monitored not only by the employee itself, but by their teachers union and their support union. So I'm telling you, if somebody wasn't getting what they were supposed to, we would know about it.
And you know about because they tell you? Is that what your statement is, that they would tell you if they weren't getting enough? Rita, is that your testimony?
I made my statement, Mr. Bradley. I have nothing else to say.
Okay, well, so the other part of this puzzle is the January payroll was about 30% more than the December payroll. Why was that the case? Did you review that at all?
The number of payrolls that are listed right on the payroll report.
Yeah, the
Some
payroll
months
report
have
shows.
3, some months have 2, Mr. Bradley. If you look at your
Yeah.
payroll report that you get
I understand that. So
it'll tell you
did
how
she-
many pays are included.
Right. Did Rita check the difference between the amount of money that we paid in November for December and the amount of number we paid in December in the January payment? So it was a November payment of $1.2 million and a December payment of $1.8 million. Did she review the difference between those and the hourly time cards of the people to make sure that they got paid accurately? Did she spot
Regarding
check them?
hourly time cards,
There's no hourly time cards? How do they track their time?
the majority of employees are salaried, full-time employees. The ones that are hourly, they do fill out a timesheet, but the
Yeah.
majority of them are salaried, and the hourly sheets were not supplied.
And the salary people, we verified that they attended the school on the days or attended virtually the days they were supposed to be there, and they made sure that they.
Mr. Bradley, I did not go around to each employee and interrogate them. I looked over the payroll. I looked over the salaries. They are in line with their salaries. I did not follow them around and make sure they worked the hours they claimed they did. That's an administrative responsibility.
Did you
That is-
spot check
that is
any of the
monitored by
administration?
Payroll department
Sorry,
on a daily basis.
I agree. And my question is, did Rita then test or verify those protocols that ensure that we're making sure we pay the right amount, not short and not over, for every employee? And apparently she did not yet. So we will train Rita, our representative, to be able to do that in the future.
You
She's
do
doing
not
great.
need to train me, Mr. Bradley. I will do the job a treasurer is supposed to do, not the job you feel I should do.
Okay. And did you turn in your bond to the board according to Pennsylvania School Code, or just to your subordinate business administrator as you notified to the district?
It's in the office, it's notarized, it's done.
Did the board authorize it and verify it yet? Did we vote on it? Rita, as responsible by Pennsylvania School Code, or are you neglecting that duty?
If you say so, Mr. Bradley.
Okay, I do. Okay, the next thing is, for anyone in the public, since we're having
I
a
believe
conversation-
your 3 minutes are up, Mr.
Yeah, I
Bradley.
know, but I'm still having, you used up most of it there, Rita, with your rant, but here we go. So this is not, unlike Rita, this is not a meeting of the board. This is a public meeting for them to address the board. So if anyone would ever like to speak at any time, raise your hand. And as a director, every individual director has the right to seek information from the public at any time during the meeting or during the month or any other time. We have a responsibility under 3 case laws, Ackerman, Palm, and DeFrancesco, to be informed. So if you have any information that would be valuable to your board so they make better decisions for you, that would be great. And I appreciate that. All you do is raise your hand. I can see it on the screen, and I will actually call on you so that you can add your 2 cents so that you don't have to just hear from me all the time, which would be great. Thank you. And a statement.
Is there any more communications, Mr. Cleaver?
Just the superintendent's report. I do have a couple other things I'd like to report on.
Please proceed. Thank you.
Our district has begun putting an updated dashboard tracker for positive COVID-19 cases that are being reported to the district. It is on our website. This will keep the community updated with the most recent case numbers of positive COVID-19 cases within our building. At this point, we have had several new notifications of positive tests. Most recently, I could say at our high school, we are currently at 3. Again, it's important for people to understand the attestation form that we sign. In the event we get to that number between 4 and 6, the district will be required to move to an all virtual platform, but that is per building. But at this point, the high school does have the most positive cases. So I do recommend everyone go, and it's done by week. So you could see the number of cases. It is based upon when the test was administered and the results were received, not necessarily when the school was notified. But we continue to work with CDC, Department of Health. We do talk to parents regarding close contacts in the event their student may be identified as a close contact. And I wanted to let everyone know we appreciate the partnership and everyone working together to continue to work together with us as we continue to battle this pandemic. Our goal is to keep our buildings open for in-person education, but it's important for people. I know we referenced it in almost every letter that we've sent out that, depending on the numbers, the cases, and the time frame, we still may be required to move to a temporary all virtual platform for a short amount of time. But again, just if you have any questions, you can go on our website. There's a lot of information up there. The dashboard's up there. And we'll, again, just keep working hard to do our best during this pandemic. And I do appreciate everyone working together. We did receive a thank you for Trees for Troops that we had this year. The district did provide a contribution of $3,150 for fresh cut Christmas trees to the Christmas Spirit Foundation and the 2020 Trees for Troops programs. I know there's many local establishments and tree farms and different things in this area that do contribute to that. But we did receive a thank you letter from Christmas Spirit Foundation for the contribution of $3,150 for fresh cut Christmas trees. And again, it is a great program, and we will continue to support that program every year moving forward. And that concludes my report and communication.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. We'll move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of November 23rd, 2020 board meeting and closure number 1. Motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second by Nathan.
I have a first by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Fuller. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for roll call vote. Mrs. Perkino?
Mr. David Bradley,
No, I'm actually reviewing the documents and it don't seem like they verify themselves, so lack of information. I'll say no.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes, I had plenty of time to review them.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the December 2nd, 2020 reorganization meeting and closure number 2. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second it, Steve.
I have a motion by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Holland. Any comments on the reorganizational meeting minutes? Hearing none, I call for roll call vote. Ms. Pertinio?
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
No, once again, the information was not provided in a timely fashion for proper review. Thank you.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes. On item C, the motion and a second to approve the minutes of the December 21st, 2020 special board meeting and closure number 3. I need a motion and a second, please.
I'll make that motion, Steve. Second, Wayne.
I'll second.
I have Mr. Holland, second by Mr. Wentz. Any comment on item C? Minutes of the special board meeting. Hearing none. Roll call vote, Mr. Pinto.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Again, no, we're not giving the information in a timely fashion, and even reviewing Rita Spinelli's payroll account change and Mr. Cleaver's erroneous statements that there are 2 pays and 3 pays. The math does not jive up. It's completely erroneous, and these things need to be corrected before we approve minutes or any of the other things in the system.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern,
Yes.
6-2, motion passes.
On the financial matters, I need a motion and a second to approve the Lehighton Area High School and Lehighton Area Middle School Activities Fund for November and December 2020. Motion and a second, please.
So moved by Nathan.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Any comment on that statement?
They were not provided to us in a timely fashion for proper review. I think you should table this until such time that they can be reviewed by, professional people that actually recognize the responsibility to trust, test, and verify the information prior to getting to a board meeting.
Any other comments from any other board member? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mrs. Bertinelli.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
No.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
7-1 motion passes.
Thank you. On to item B under financial matters. I need a motion and a second to approve the Act 1 resolution certifying that the 2021-2022 school year tax increase will be less than or equal to the 4.2% index calculated by the Department of Education.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first by Mrs. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Comment on item B.
I have a comment.
Proceed, Mr. Bradley.
The method to which this decision can be made is based upon the information of expenditures, the contract that's in negotiation, and the expenditures of health benefits, the expenditures of standard operating process, and the income created by the community in several areas. One is from their income, which was greatly reduced during COVID, and the others were their real estate taxes. Since this district has not filed its AFR that was due back in October, nor has it provided the Board of Administration, the oversight board, the government, with the government data that it needs to make this decision. I think that you guys are doing what we call, well, let's use a better term since that's too vulgar for you guys. You're gilding the lily here. You're causing problems within the district by not doing your job as a government oversight to ensure that this information is provided before it shows up here on a board agenda. To make this decision with the absence of information would be premature and irresponsible. We all took an oath that requires the access of fidelity, which means the faithfulness to the community we serve. You don't have the information. You can't make this decision. You can't guarantee one way or the other. And this district is spending $3 million on payroll. It's not verifying. I just showed that up on the screen, how much of the discrepancy it is between the 2 pays and the 3 pays within a 2-month period. Thousands of dollars. You have $3 million shown in the Auditor General's report for contracts signed by Larry Stern's wife's boss. You got all sorts of stuff going on. This is where Larry's going to try to cut you off because he doesn't want to hear it. But there is an Auditor General's report. There is millions of dollars. And even after the millions of dollars was just corruptively spent and wasted for no educational benefits, according to the Auditor General, at no time did you remove those dollars from the budget, knowing you don't need to throw $3 million in the toilet to get no benefit. And then what are you going to do? Take it from the taxpayers again the next year? It doesn't make sense that you guys are still doing this. And the fact that you have not had a board meeting where you reviewed accurately and held accountable the administration and held accountable the government board. And it's nice that Rita went in to go look at something, but it's obviously she's completely naive to the responsibility of what she's supposed to be looking at, how to do it. We can teach her, we can train her if she's willing, but it sounds like she's just a stubborn, whatever you want to call it. And the reality of the matter is the district suffers. We suffer financially. Our children suffer from lack of supervision and the injuries that are caused. They're the victims when they end up in front of the judge that we didn't supervise them, both sets, right? The hazing and the hazers are both victims of our lack of government. And the fact that you guys are abdicating all this responsibility and not doing your job is a mess. If anyone in the public would like to speak on this matter, you just have to raise your hand. I'd love to hear from you. There's in attendance 54 people. Do not
Okay,
let,
Mr. Bradley,
do not let,
this-
hold on, do
This
not
is the
let them
Act One
sign.
index to stay
Do
under
not let
4.2%
them, do
tax.
not let them sign.
This
Do
is to
not let them
stay
sign.
under
I know that.
4.2% if you didn't hear it.
I
You
did-
had your 3
I did.
minutes.
I
Roll
don't-
call vote, Mrs.
One-
Bertinio,
One more
please.
time. No, we can hear from the public, and it is to stay underneath it.
You're just rambling again.
No, I'm not
Mrs.
rambling, sir.
Bertinio,
You have a
roll call
responsibility
vote,
that you're
please.
not-
You're not providing anything that's of value and substance.
There's
Right.
value to
Mrs.
holding this
Gilmore
government
Hoy?
accountable, sir. Larry, you can't just bully. Larry, you can't bully it along.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
We need information. I abstain from lack of information provided by the administration and the board as required by Pennsylvania School Code for incoming directors prior to making this decision. It's part of the law, Larry. You're not above the law. You got to stop acting above the law. You have a responsibility.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes, and I'm disappointed that all the other members have voted no to stay not to stay underneath the 4.2% Act One index. Motion,
Passes.
thank you, Mr. Pinion. On item C, I need a motion and a second. You can move that up. Clear. Need a motion and a second to approve the acceptance of the terms of the payments for the open invoices from the Palmerton School District. The payment scale will be the following: payment requests made by July of each year listed.
So moved.
Total of $573,401.79. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Mr. Stern.
Second by Nathan.
I have a first by Mrs. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Fuller. Is there any comments on item C from the board?
I have one.
Proceed, Mr. Bradley.
Does anyone else want to go first? And I am not, as a director, I am not limited to 3 minutes, but go ahead. Does anyone else want to go first? Barring none. Gail, do you want to go first, or you want to give me your 3 minutes too?
You can have mine.
No, we don't trade 3 minutes.
Joy, would you like to go,
We're
or can I
not
have your 3 minutes
the
as
Senate
well?
where we can debate things and give 30 seconds to each participant. Mr. Bradley, make your comment. Thank you.
All right, my comment is, Larry, you're a bully. That's my first comment. You and your tribe of people that have provided
Please keep the
non-compliance.
comments pertinent to the item.
It is, sir. It is.
Have a motion C, Mr. Bradley?
Sir, it is. And I want to make sure we all understand what took place here. And I think it's unfair that you're shoving this down these poor citizens' throats at $573,401. Not only did you give a interest-free loan to Palmerton for nearly a decade, you're now giving them another secondary interest-free bond for $500,000 payable over the next 10 years with zero interest. Let's understand where this came from. The Board of School Directors failed to oversee their subordinate administration in billing for services, invoicing services to other districts that we, as our taxpayers, provided to them. They failed for many, many years. Who in the administration neglected to do this duty? Who in the board neglected to do this duty is all stuff that's within our authority as government officials providing oversight to find out why this poor community was stuck with $500,000 of extra services being provided over the last decade or so, and now being responsible to be held hostage for another 10 years of interest-free money for services that we've already provided to these districts instead of asking them for the check. It makes no sense to me, except for the fact that Larry Stern and his family members that have, worked for the district, as he has testified.
Mr. Bradley.
People working for the
Mr.
district
Bradley,
has testified.
please stay
Mr.
pertinent to
Cleaver,
the item.
Mr. Cleaver, you are
Mr.
not
Bradley?
trustworthy. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bradley.
My 3
This
minutes,
is,
sir.
this is a repayment of funds, yes, for expended services that were provided to Palmerton School District students by Lehighton that was never billed to the Palmerton School District. We are grateful that actually Palmerton is going to, along with paying back those funds, whether it be in the terms that you don't agree with, but we are grateful that they are participating in paying back those funds.
Well, Mr. Stern, other than the fact that we waited almost a decade to ask for them, they're obligated to pay for
Bradley, you
They're
were
obligated.
involved in part of this where it
I am.
wasn't
I'm the
billed
one that helped solve the
properly. You were
problem.
a board member.
No, you were not the one that helped
I
solve
am
the
the one
problem,
solving the
Mr.
problem.
Bradley. You had no idea until Ms. Denicola brought it to the board's attention.
Actually, this is
So
one
no
of the
one
things.
was aware of it, so don't make it as if you knew what was going on, Mr. Bradley. We were not aware of this not being taken place until Ms. Denicola brought it to the attention of the administration here and the board and was asking questions. So don't act like you knew what was going on, because it wasn't until Ms. Denicola appeared here as the business manager that these invoices were being requested. So
Actually-
don't sit there and say that you were aware. If you were aware of it, then Mr. Bradley, shame on you for not sharing it with the other administration and the other board members prior to Mrs. Denicola's arrival.
Okay, so now.
May we have
for
a
the rest-
roll
hold on a
call,
second.
please, Mr.
No,
Cleaver?
no, I'm going to answer that, Rita. So the first thing is, not only did the Jim Thorpe area have this issue, where I then announced and brought it up that we had the same issue, and we did bring it up to the Auditor General. It's one of the reasons the Auditor General arrived here. Is
Mr.
because
Bradley, that is
where you can
very-
recreate your own history, and you can
Completely
blow
off
smoke
base.
on that. You
Roll
can
call
blow
vote,
smoke
Mr.
up.
Tenio,
You
please.
can blow smoke up everyone's butt if you'd like, Mr.
That's what
Cleaver.
your job is, Mr.
However,
Bradley. Roll call vote, please,
However,
Mr.
it is
Tenio.
more than evidence
Mrs. Rita
inside the
Spinelli.
minutes that this is a problem. You should not be giving away a free loan for $500,000, a free bond, interest-free for 10 years to another district that has a
believe this
responsibility,
is
lawful
been-
responsibility, to
Mrs.
pay
Rita
us
Spinelli.
for services that we provided as a district. We
I
should
believe
have
that
the
was for Ms.
discussion
Spinelli's vote.
prior to, we should have a discussion prior to
Is that Ms.
taking
Spinelli's
this
vote?
vote. And Larry's bullying and you're bullying to
I've
try
made the
to
motion
sweep
that
this
we
under the
accept.
rug, that $500,000, and this wasn't the only district, guys.
believe we're,
There was a
trying to
lot
get
of other
the roll
districts that
call,
didn't
Mr.
get billed.
Stern.
This was just the biggest one.
Mr. Stern, trying to get.
This was the biggest district that didn't get paid or billed.
Ms. Spinelli, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
My yes is qualified by we should just get all the money up front. We should not be giving them a new 10-year interest-free loan on behalf and the backs of the Lehighton Area School District taxpayer.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes. Motion passes.
On to item D, I need a motion and a second to approve the payment of bills for December 2020, the date frame, and January 2021. December 20, for a total of $2,007,102.22. If you could scroll up, please, Mr. Cleaver. And for January, a total of $4,089,896.43. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved by Nathan.
Second,
I have a motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Comments from the board on the payment of bills?
I have a comment.
Steve?
No one else has a comment? Okay,
I told you to proceed, sir.
no problem. I appreciate that. Let's see how long I get till you cut me off. So I would like
Well,
to
as
hear
long
from-
as you stay pertinent, it probably will be a certain period of time, but once you start to go astray, then we have to rein you back in. So thank you very much, sir.
That took about 30 seconds. Thanks for cutting me off. Listen, I just pulled up the documents that you looked at or said that you're giving to this district to make educated decisions on payroll. I pulled them up on my screen so the public can see them. The first one is the November 20 payrolls for $1.222423 million, right? 69 cents. And it says two pays. And then I have another one that shows December 20. Everybody can pull it up in their packets if they so desire. And the packet says 3 pays, $1.8 million and some change. And then very accurately, we took that in a calculator and divided out the 2 pays and the 3 pays, and then took a difference between the two. Now, according to Mr. Cleaver, prior to this conversation, he said, and according to Ms. Spinelli, they testified that they did their job, yet there's a discrepancy of over $7,000 per pay, a difference. So if there's difference between the pays, there either is differences between who's getting paid and or how much they're getting paid and whether or not they should or shouldn't be getting paid. Now, I hope that we're not underpaying our employees, but at the same time, I'm kind of tired of, this risk of us overpaying people, stipends and other things, to do work that may or may not have been done because the administration has hornswoggled the attention of the board and they want to hide and block information. I'm also putting up on the
Mr.
screen-
Bradley, exactly who are you accusing of what?
There you go, Rita. I'm accusing of you not doing your job as a board of director. So I'm looking at now also.
And
on
did
my
it ever
screen-
occur to you that people work different hours at different times? Did it ever occur to you that our taxpayers also get paid through our payroll account? Did it ever occur to you that people have their payroll set up differently and sometimes have a payment come out for something that other times they don't? There are many, many reasons why payrolls change. Not all of them are dishonest. As a matter of fact, mostly none of them are.
I think it's also.
Yeah,
worth
people are
pointing out
human.
that,
Hold on.
Mr. Bradley,
People
Mr.
are
Bradley,
human.
please, I was
Mr.
speaking.
Nathan. Oh, go ahead, Nathan. You go. Go ahead. You used to be a treasurer, not doing your job.
You're looking at a $600,000 payroll and you're complaining about a difference of $7,000. That's just over 1%. I'd be shocked if there are many businesses out there who don't vary by a percent or two each payroll. You're making a big deal out of something that is normal in the case of doing business.
Actually, Mr. Fowler, I think that the thing that is normal within business is to review the payroll and ensure that every employee is paid properly and each employee is not overpaid or underpaid. And I think
don't disagree with that, Mr. Bradley.
Then if you don't agree with it, then why don't you verify it to make sure it happens?
Difference is making a mountain out of a molehill.
No, you want to look at the difference and find out why the difference occurred. So why did this difference occur? Do we even know?
I believe that was some of the things.
Did anyone
that
check?
Spinelli just
I don't trust you,
spoke
Mr.
of.
Cleaver. There's
Mr.
no
Bradley,
reason to
could
even
you
have
please
you have
let
a comment.
somebody else speak?
Nah, there's no reason to have him speak. He's the administration we're holding accountable. And whether
Well,
Rita
Mr.
likes it or
Bradley,
not,
did you ever
whether
think
Rita
about the
likes it or not,
differences in-
whether
Think about
Rita likes it or not, we
payroll
answer to the
for
public.
Part-time people
If
that
we
aren't
can't-
employed over the holiday period.
Thank you.
for
I do
school-
consider that. That's
How
why I
about
want
that
to.
when people hit the social security tax threshold. How
There
about
is-
that?
I
There is
agree.
also the
How about
fact
some
that
of
our
those things like
teachers
that?
have-
You're Mr. Businessman, you should know. Roll
Yeah,
call
so I
with
agree.
Mr. Manuel, please.
So I agree. If the change is there, we have to report to the
The
public.
additional,
We report to the public why these changes occurred.
teachers
They should
are
be
also
enumerated.
doing additional duties
And-
with the cyber program, which is again, possibly where their hourly, timesheets are being submitted. That all goes through payroll again.
Did you
Mr.
do
Brown,
this
there
though,
is a
Rita? Rita,
large
did you check all
number.
these things and find out whether or not they were
are
accurate?
checked. They are.
By
reviewed.
who?
What
Rita?
They are
what I'm
reviewed
board
by
going
has
the
to check it.
say to
business
you,
office.
Mr. Bradley,
We
if
have to
you
answer. We don't have to
quiet
answer to
and
Rita.
let-
We don't answer to you, Rita. We, as the board,
and
answer to
we
the public.
certainly don't answer to you,
Sir,
Mr.
again.
No,
Cleaver.
no, I'm a public official. I don't get. They don't answer to me. The public is who we answer to.
Oh,
This is
Mr.
a
Bradley,
public
when you're
meeting.
becoming belligerent, we have the right to make the change in the process to make sure you're quieted down. Your issue was made known. You don't have to continue on it. Roll call vote, Ms.
No,
Virginia.
we need to understand what you're doing here, sir.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
This is many bills
Yes.
are not there.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
Absolutely not. They didn't do their job. We have a responsibility
Nathan Bowler.
to answer to the public.
Mr. Nathan Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no, motion passes.
On the
Did
IFE,
Larry just vote to pay his wife? I think so. And no offense, if we have this many discrepancies and now you know why there's so many differences, why don't we answer that to the board?
There are.
Why don't we answer
yeah, I
that?
believe item E,
Why
Mr.
don't we
Stern,
answer
correct?
that to
Yes.
the public?
I just wanted to make sure
Motion
it's
and a
in-
second to make the following transfers from the general fund to the food service fund as per reimbursements from the Commonwealth. $86,281.43 for November 2020. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first from Ms. Spinelli, a second from Mr. Wentz. Any questions on this reimbursement from the Commonwealth and the transfer? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Pinio, please.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item F, I need a motion and a second to make the following transfers from the high school multi-handicap support function code 1270 at $5,000 to the psychological services function code 2140, $15,000 to the elementary center life skills support function code, and $5,000 to the learning support function code. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
I have a.
Why are these budget transfers?
By Mr. Wentz.
Yeah, why are these budget
Comments
transfers?
from the board, please.
Yeah, wow, Larry, you're really angry, ain't you? You ought to learn to.
Well, I'm tired of you stepping on me, Mr. Bradley.
Yeah,
Thank
I know.
you.
You should-
You have a
you
comment, sir?
Yes, Larry, I do. I'm wondering why the budget transfers are being done for these amounts exactly. Was any justification presented for these budget transfers? Larry.
Sorry, Mr. Stern, I'm unable to hear Mr. Bradley with his voice reflection that he's using.
Oh, I'll be louder. No problem. Thank you for letting me be a little louder. So it looks like we're making budget transfers for exactly $5,000, $1,500, and $5,000. Did anyone review why these budget transfers are being for such exacted amounts? And was the budget under budgeted previously, or was it over budgeted? And where's this money coming from?
The budget was, when it was put into the budget system for 2021, it was put in as a high school account, which is a 1270. These are district-wide accounts that we are looking to do and transfer the money to the correct account. So the amount of money that was placed in the function was not all needed at the high school to meet the students' needs and could be better used in different budgets such as psychologist testing supplies and elementary instructional supplies. So that's why the transfer is being made. It was put into one code that would only been able to be spent at the high school, and Mr. Rarick and Ms. Kistler met and were able to move the money around so that it is correct in the current accounts that we are requesting the transfer to be made to.
Dollars that were located within the budget originally accumulated, what, $11,500?
The amounts are correct. It's just the codes that need to be adjusted.
And when they changed these numbers, when somebody decided to change these numbers, when someone made the advice to change these numbers, and they put it on this board motion, no discussion with the board took place prior to this motion showing up on the table. No finance committee meeting was reviewed by it. Nothing was done. And now it's showing up to get its rubber stamp by people like Larry and Wayne and Rita and these people that have been proven to not do their job for the benefit of the public. And here you have a budget code and budget monies being moved around. And last year we didn't have transportation. We're struggling with paying the bills, and you got $500,000 owed from Palmerton. And there was other districts that owed us money too that I found, by the way. And when the Auditor General came in, after we asked them to come in,
Bradley,
we
stay on
found all
task.
sorts of
This item.
discrepancies. And here you have a budget. I'm talking. Here you have a budget change. And yet we didn't even finish our AFR for last year. We didn't even finish the budget for this year, and you already are making different changes. So I think you should table this until such time that the administration has the responsibility to answer to the board first. Then the board has a responsibility to seek stakeholder input under LASD policy 011, Rita. We're the public servants of the community, the stakeholders. And then let them decide whether this is a good idea, bad idea, or is this make it more easy for the entire district to reach into the pockets of this community and get what they want without actually having a budget assigned to what we are providing to this government agency so that they can actually be held accountable. And I think that is the problem that has gotten this district into the situation that it is, because of things like this, a motion showing up on a board meeting where this board had no clue as to why or what happened, and now they're going to go rubber stamp it. And it's a shame.
Thank you,
And it's
Mr.
because
Bradley.
it's
Any
causing people
comments?
like that. You're welcome. And it's great that I can provide this insight to you, Larry. Now the question is, will you
Thank you
look in the
very
mirror?
much, Mr. Bradley. I
Larry,
don't
will
need
you
that
look
for
will you
Elizabeth.
look in the
Any other
mirror
comments
and
from any other
excuse
board
me, Larry,
member?
will you look in the mirror and actually recognize the
Roll
evil that you're
call, Mr.
portraying upon
Tenio,
this community?
please.
Will you look in the mirror and see the evil you're portraying
Mr.
upon this
Stephen
community?
Holland?
You're going to ask Steve? He doesn't read anything. Did you read it, this, Steve? Did you read this?
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Steve, did you read this?
Yes.
What does it
Mrs.
say? Do you want to
Gail
explain
Mahalik.
it? Do you want to explain it, Steve?
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
Abstention, lack of information provided to the board prior to showing up on the agenda.
Mr. Nathan Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Yes, and thank you to the business office for actually doing the transfers to make sure we're in the right function codes of where the money's actually being spent. Thank you. Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
On item D, I need a motion and a second to approve the following reports. Expenditure report, expenditure by object, revenue summary, expenditure comparison report, and revenue comparison report. Closure number 7.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Ms. Spinelli. Any comments on the reports, please? Roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio?
I'm sorry, I was a little slow. The reports, again, were provided to this board on Thursday and not to the public in a timely fashion so that they can have review. We serve them. And when you look at the reports that were provided, a lot of them show zeros inside the numbers, and it doesn't make sense that they're just not providing that information. I didn't know if that was the fact that they didn't have the information, or was the fact that the zeros is that literally nothing occurred within that time period for the board summary.
Any other comments, board? Roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio, please.
Wait, can we get board questions
Gail
answered so we can
Mahalik?
make an informed, wait, can we get board information
No.
provided prior to making a decision so it can be an informed decision? A question was asked of the administration. Larry, can you please request the administration to respond to the directors so that the public can understand what's taking place within their government agency? You have the government authority, Larry. You have the government authority, Larry. You have the government authority, Larry. You need to use your government authority to act as
The information
government.
was provided by the government in a timely fashion.
Yeah, but it shows a lot of zeros, Larry. Larry, a lot of zeros, man.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
A lot of zeros, Larry.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
No.
Mr. David Bradley?
Well, I still want the answer. So why is the tech support services still zero when that was one of the #1 areas that we were over budget with last year? It's not showing. Why are we letting this board ignore and rubber stamp this administration's responsibility to compile an accurate report, Larry? Why are you doing your job?
No vote?
Why are you pushing this through? I'll say abstention, lack of information, but Larry, I want to know,
Thank you, Mr.
how do you look at
Bradley.
yourself in the mirror when you don't do your job, Larry?
Mr. Nathan
Don't you have
Fuller?
any moral responsibility to the public?
Mr. Nathan Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Yes.
Nathan, Steve, don't you
5
have
yes,
any
2 no,
moral
1
responsibility to
abstention.
look at this
Motion passes.
information?
On to item 8, I
Nathan,
need a
Nathan.
motion and a second to
Excuse me,
approve
Mr.
the
Stern. Hold on.
exemptions
Excuse me,
per
Mr. Stern.
capita and/or
Excuse me, Mr.
occupational
Stern.
tax per the attached list enclosure number 7.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
So moved.
Larry and Nathan, don't you have a responsibility to look at the information prior to making a
Second,
decision?
Wayne.
Can I have a first by Mr. Fuller and a second by Mr. Wentz? Any questions on the exemptions for per capita or occupational tax enclosure number 8? Hearing none.
Why did you shut me off? I had a question to ask. Wait, I have a question to ask fellow board member Steve Holland and Nathan.
Roll call. You know, we don't question board members.
I
in
question
meetings,
board
Mr.
members. We
Bradley.
have
You
to.
can do
There
what
are
you want.
public
There's
officials.
no answer guaranteed.
I know. That's why I want to
Bertinio,
ask them.
roll
Let
call
them say no
vote,
comment.
please.
Let them say no comment, Larry. Give them the chance to say no comment.
Roll call vote, please.
Let them say
Mrs.
no
Rita
comment.
Spinelli. Mrs. Rita Spinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz.
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers.
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley.
Yes, God bless them. I hope everyone else asks for a refund too.
Mr. Nathan Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik.
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
Item I, the motion and second to refund the following occupational taxes for the year 2020 to Susan Dietz, occupational taxes for year 2019 to Mary Beth Goldberg, occupational tax for 2020 to Alan Sinkowitz, and occupational tax for year 2020 to Cheryl Sinkowitz. Motion and a second, please.
So moved. Steve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Ms. Spinelli. Any questions on this, please?
Yeah, I'd like to go back and ask Nathan if he'd like to answer. And if you'd like to, Larry, give him the chance to say no comment. And also Steve, if they like to have no comment.
Item I,
But
Mr. Bradley.
I know, but
So I
you
will
cut
call
me
for
off,
a
so
roll
it's
call vote.
unfair. Hey,
Your
it's
comment
unfair.
is not
You're being
pertinent.
mean, you're cheating.
Discussing roll
You're
call vote,
cheating.
Mr.
You're cheating the
Bertinio.
public from proper representation. You're cheating. Stop cheating. So being
Thank you,
unfair.
David, for your comment.
I'm calling
And
foul.
roll
It's
call vote,
unfair.
please.
Please. ask
Mr.
him.
Wayne Wentz.
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers.
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley.
Yes, God bless him, and I hope everyone else applies as well.
Mr. Nathan Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik.
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion passes.
On item J, I need a motion and a second to approve the closure of the following accounts. ACE grant account, athletic project account, health benefits account, security deposit account. Balances to be transferred to the general fund account. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
First by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on the closing of these accounts? None, roll call vote, Ms. Bertinio, please.
Miss Joy Beers.
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley.
Yes, but I got to ask, I think it's missing one. Is that possible? Where's the one for the stadium? We're going to consolidate that one as well for the stadium construction?
That's the athletic projects account.
I'm sorry, say it again?
That's the one labeled as athletic projects.
Athletic projects, okay. And the balance was 0 in that one?
No, the balance was,
5,400?
yes.
Okay, and that's being transferred to the general fund. So on that athletic projects account, we're going to maintain those documents, correct, Mr. Rarick? I've requested all of these accounts under right to know request and have been blocked so far. We're getting them slowly, but I want to make sure that we don't disrupt the information. I know that's one of the great reasons why they're consolidating them, because they were all basically hanging in there doing nothing, and the judge started saying, "Yo, you got to give this information to your board." So this does do a great job in that regard. But I just want to make sure we're retaining the documents and the records so we can find the other discrepancies within those accounts that we were finding in the first ones.
Yes, we will certainly do that.
Thank you. See how easy that was, Larry? You can just talk to these people, you know, if you recognize that they need a job to do, and we're there to make sure they do it.
Mr. Nathan Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik.
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz.
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item K, need a motion and a second to approve and accept the Special Education COVID-19 Impact Mitigation Grant Agreement between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Lehighton Area School District for the 2021 school year. Total grant, $19,619, enclosure number 9. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve. Second, Wayne.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on the grant?
Where are these monies being applied? And under what budget item are we putting them?
The money for this grant is part of the Department of Education award. It's predetermined by the state. The money, how they're going to be used when we apply for the grants, we have to include that. So for example, online life skills curriculum, Chromebooks for students, efforts to address student loss, and also if recoupment of skills due to the school closures, it could be used for reading materials. And also we did include provision for extended school year, which is a summer program for students with disabilities.
So not to be short, my question was, where is this going to be applied in the budget and where is it going to be expended in the budget? There'd be two line items. It gets put
Special
into
education.
Special education on the expenditure side, and on the income side, we're going to record this in our budget where? Extra line item under revenue?
It'll show in as a revenue because the money comes in, and it'll also be, you'll be able to see it from the bank statements as well.
Thank you. See how easy that is, Larry, to do your job and oversee the government.
Roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
yes,
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
yes,
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item L. I need a motion and a second to approve and accept the continuity of education for additional targeted support and improvement schools grant between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Lehighton Area School District for 2021 school year. Total grant, $55,050. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
second,
A first by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Any questions on the grant or the application thereof?
I'll ask the same two questions. Where are we putting this on the revenue side and where are you going to put it on the expense side? And
Mr.
the
Bradley,
physical budget
actually,
codes.
if you go through your enclosure packets, you could actually see where all the money is presented and where it'll be assigned. This individual target grant is for the high school, but there's even more detail in your packets, so you can refer to that.
You put that up on the screen. I have my packet open. I'm looking at enclosure 10, correct?
Yes. You'll see the blocks that are there in your packet, and you could see that it's listed there for that amount. And then if you continue through your packets, it even gives you a bigger breakdown as you move forward. It talks Lehighton Area High School, 4-digit school building number. So that number will be assigned to the account, and it gives you a complete breakdown of where that money will be assigned based upon the accounting codes.
So
Page 7 of 19, you can see
Hold on
where
a second.
that begins.
I'll get to it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Page 7 of 50, you mean, right? Or
7 of 9.
My
Actually,
document,
pages
enclosure 10 is
12 through
50.
19.
My document is 50 pages.
It might, depending on how it's scanned, it may be different numbers. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well,
But yeah,
are you looking at the same information you provided to your board, or are you looking at different information?
It's the exact same enclosure that you got, so it has it listed by function under instruction, salaries, 100, amounts, 7,000 for that individual. Then you actually have a breakdown and description of exactly what that falls under.
So page 7 of 19.
Well, it may be, depending on how it scanned, it may
Equitable
be,
share calculation.
if you go to 12 of 19, section budget, school level expenditures, you'll see it all broken down by code.
So my document goes 4 of 19, 5 of 19, 6 of 19, right? 7 of 19, and you're looking at what, 10 of 19? 12?
12 of 19.
It looks like they scanned both sides and all the other ones are blank in between.
There is some that are left blank, yes.
Yeah, so it only shows instruction salaries, $7,000. It's not breaking it down further down
If
to our
you
budget
keep,
line.
The next pages, please.
continue to go through it, you'll get a blank page and then you'll see the next section.
It
It's all
still only
broken.
shows is special ed programs and only as salaries.
If you go to the next page, it'll say special education program salaries 46,496. Yes, so that's what it's included.
So it's only going for these salaries.
Yeah, because we would be paying teachers extended school year and paying teachers for the additional support.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to question. I see the same thing that you see. I see the same documents you see according to what you're telling me, and that's good that we're having the same documents at least. But the question is, this money is now only being moved to salaries as an additional
Now,
payment.
please continue to page 16 of 19. You'll see supplies as well, 600.
Right, but the salary functions, is that a function of these teachers that we already have on salary? So you're paying them extra on that payroll? Is that where this $7,000 is going?
It could be used for extra for tutoring and different types of programs. Extended school year is also a additional where they get approved hourly and they get paid over the summer to do that. So that
Right,
could
so
easily-
who's making that decision?
that is all run through the special education.
Yeah, so who's making the decision as to where these found monies are being spent?
By
The board or
approving,
the administration?
by approving the grant, the
Right.
allocation has to fall within those functions that are listed in those documents. that
And
you're-
then when you drill it down a little further to actually who's getting these dollars, that's our responsibility. And that's what I don't see in these documents.
Okay.
You see that there's a salary of $53,496 being paid. Where are we applying that and what is the student benefit from that salary?
It is depending on what the needs of those individual students are. Some students who qualify for extended school year may not want the extended school year. Some of the students who are qualified for special different types of programs or extended online programs or remediation or tutoring, they may not want that.
But all
But
of,
this is allowing us to
all of the
provide
budgets,
that, and it
right.
falls within the codes that are presented.
And all the other budget items within this entire process, all are related to as zero. Page 17, page 18, page 19. They're all zeros.
That is correct.
So you're saying that,
Supplies and salary are the two main areas.
yeah, but every other area of this budget, you're not applying any of those dollars. You're just putting it to salaries.
That is correct.
I don't know if that's the proper allocation of these funds.
That's the way the grant was submitted and approved, and now the board by the state, and we're asking for the board's approval as well.
I think the board should review this prior to making this decision. I think
We
it'd be
did
wise.
get the document in time to review it,
I think
Mr.
it
Bradley.
was-
You're just looking at it
Mr.
now.
Stern-
That was your choice not to review it earlier and not
It
understand. the
was
document.
reviewed. It
Not
was
asking
reviewed, sir.
questions.
It was reviewed, and it's
No,
provided
no, it
to the board.
wasn't.
It was provided. Why wasn't it reviewed, Larry?
You've asked your questions, sir.
Yeah, Larry. So that's nice, Larry. Rush it through,
Roll
man.
call
Stamp
vote,
away.
Mr. Tenio, please.
Rubber stamp it away, Larry. You're doing great, bud. You're just so
Thank
proud
you
of
very
me.
much for your continued
So
support.
proud of
Roll
you,
call
Larry.
vote, Mr.
I'm
Tenio,
proud of you,
please.
Larry. I'm gonna send you
Mr.
a mirror
Nathan
for
Pola.
Christmas.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik. Yes. Mrs. Rita Spinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz.
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers.
No.
Mr. David Bradley.
Abstention. Lack of information provided to the board prior to being able to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
6 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
On the item M, I need a motion and a second to approve and accept the continuity of education equity gear grant agreement between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, through the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Lehighton Area School District for 2020-21 school year. Total grant award $39,000. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Fuller. Questions on the grant?
Larry, can you identify where this grant was provided to this board prior to Tim Tack applying for it?
The grant was, the amount was given to the district. The district requests the amount be based. If you go to page 22 of 28, Mr. Bradley, you could see that this grant is being
That was not my question.
assigned to $36,406.50 for the Samsung Chromebooks that the district was purchasing. And then an additional $2,500 for the salary for the swivel program in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. I will say that even with the purchase of the notebooks, the district does still pay for the Google accounts. So that doesn't pay for everything. It pays for the physical computer, but the district does still pay for the license agreements for each Chromebook. So that shows you where this grant is being allocated.
That was nice, very helpful. I'm so happy. Now let's try to answer my question. My question was, when was this provided to the board in the past? And meaning when this grant was applied for, and I'm glad we're getting money for the Chromebooks and I'm glad we're getting some dollars here. It's nice. My question was, when was this presented to the board for oversight prior to Tim Tack applying for this grant or during the application of this grant? Did Tim ever come to this board and say, I'm applying this grant, here's what we're aiming for, here's a grant that's available to
No,
us?
the administration made that decision to where to assign
Without
the
any
money.
government
that we're
oversight.
assigned.
Yeah, without any, so where is it that the value of this government agency to fight for these grants in addition to, so that we don't just get Chromebooks, but we can actually get the other services and fees that our children need in this poor community where we give away resources to other districts, give away $3 million to LEA, but there's no one on our team, no seat in the room for the members of our
Bradley,
stakeholders.
you are now
Why are you cutting me
accusing
off?
us of doing
Why are you cutting
things
me off?
in the wrong places.
Yeah, why are you cutting
You
me
gotta
off?
watch what you're saying.
Why are you cutting me off, Frida? Don't cut me off. I'm talking.
I'm
The
cutting you
problem-
off because you're saying incorrect statements.
No, I'm not. I'm not making incorrect statements. There's very standard statement. If there's a grant available through the state, we need to advocate for our students in our community so that we, as the Lehighton Tribe Pride, can take care of our kids. We need to supervise our kids so they're not left alone in locker rooms. We need to supervise
Okay.
to make sure
Roll call vote,
That's
Mr.
enough.
Daniel,
make sure
please.
$3 million isn't wasted and taken out of
Roll
our
call vote,
taxpayers'
please.
money and not
Mr.
given to
Stephen
this.
Holland?
We need to make sure that
Yes.
that $500,000 is not being
Mrs.
used
Gail Mahalik?
as
Yes.
discovered in the Auditor
Mrs.
General's report.
Spinelli?
Yes.
You guys are funny.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
I'm sorry, do I get the chance to talk or are you just going to cut me off only for the vote? I'll take the vote of yes, so we get this dollars, but I think the logic that we're applying is poor. We need to advocate for our local students to make sure that people like Larry and Rita just don't steamroll ideas
Mr.
for the
Nathan
benefit of our
Fuller.
community from this board.
Mr. Nathan Fuller? Mr. Nathan Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On item N, I need a motion and a second to accept the donation to the general funds of $2,500 from the Bowmanstown Rod and Gun Club. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve. Second,
First
Steve.
by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland. Questions on the donation from the Rod and Gun Club?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Our policy has very strict parameters to which we can receive funds and get funds and support things within the community. How did these funds get, how did they acquire them prior to giving them to us?
These funds are from different programs that they run, and they have in the past and continue to do so, allocate funds to the district. Sometimes they'll put parameters around them. Other times it will just be a general donation from the general fund for the district. So they do this. You'll see ones from them. You'll see ones from other nonprofit organizations as well too at time.
But it was not
as-
from the promotion of drugs, alcohol, or other illicit things. for
Forget
the
about it.
benefit of
Roll call
citizens.
vote, Ms.
Is
Bertenio,
that-
please.
Larry, we have a responsibility to meet our
You're
code.
being ignorant, Mr. Bradley. These people work
you
very
think-
hard to get this money together through their organizations, whether it's from their kitchens, from block shoots, from raffles or whatever, and now you're denigrating them to the
I'm
point.
not
that
denigrating
you're
them. I think they're
selling
awesome.
drugs, doing this.
No,
So-
I said they're
No,
awesome.
yes, that
I
is
said
your
they're awesome.
tactic.
No,
Roll
it's
call
not my
vote, Ms.
tactic.
Bertenio,
Mr.
please. I
Stern,
respect
that's
this
a
organization too much to have
Mr.
you
Stern,
talk like
it's a
that.
it's a mischaracterization. I said the board has a responsibility
Mr.
to know where the funds
Nathan
came
Fuller?
from. If it's from the sale of alcohol, we
Yes,
have
I
a
appreciate
concern.
their donation.
I think you should accept it, but I think you should have a discussion as to where it came from. sir.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
I think we should accept the donation provided it meets our school policy. Thank you.
Is that a yes?
I said, we can't tell. That's the whole point. If we knew it met the policy, it'd be real easy. But the fact that these guys are blindly
Yes,
just
no,
taking the
or
money.
abstention?
Yeah, so I said yes, as long as it meets the
Is
school
it
policy.
yes?
That's as long as it
No,
meets
there's
school policy.
no-
Can we
there's
get the
no
information so
long
we can make
answer.
it, so we
Yes, no, or
can,
abstain.
can we get the, no, it's yes, but we need
Yes,
the information
okay.
prior,
Mr.
we
Larry
need the
Stern.
information prior
Yes.
to a vote, sir. You need the information
Item
prior to a
O.
vote.
On to item O, motion and a second to accept the donation of $1,000 from the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley Incorporated to be used for the G2 Girls Group Program. Motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve.
And I'll second this one because I know that the United Way meets our LASD policies for the means to which they collect dollars that they can then use and we can accept. That's the problem,
All
Larry.
right, Steve, Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Bradley. Any questions on the donation from the Greater Lehigh Valley United Way?
Could I make a statement quick? This is Steve. I would like to thank all groups for their appreciative gifts that they give Lehighton Area School District and other school districts in our area. It's greatly appreciated, and thank you very much for all your support. Thank you.
Any other comments from any board member?
I'll make one as well. And I'd like to thank anybody that wants to donate money to the district. However, I think they should read our policy on how the money can be collected prior to its acceptance by this school district, because we have a responsibility to the students to protect the students and save the community. And if you're going to do certain things to collect monies for us, they have to meet our policies. You can't offer us monies from things that may or may not have taken place within that organization. Thank you.
All right. Roll call vote, Ms. Bertenio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern? 8 yes, motion carries.
Now, item P, I need a motion and a second to approve the agreement with Pentel Data Services and the Lehighton Area School District for the E-rate services and discounts for the school years 2021 through 2026. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Ms. Spinelli. Any questions on the agreement between Lehighton and Pentel Data? Hearing none, roll call vote, please. Mr. Bertenio?
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
Yes, and normally we provide the dollar amount that this would be so that the public could see it. I know they hid that from this agreement. And we also would normally allow the business administration to show the district who else applied for this contract and agreement so that they could show that we're being competitive. The lack of that kind of sucks, but also.
Mr. Bradley, this is not that type of contract. This is a contract with them that we could use their monthly billing fees as an E-rate and get a discounted rate. It is not a contract that is out for
It's actually an agreement. It's an agreement that the board has to approve. And prior to board approval, we should A, shop things around, B, verify what's being done.
Again,
C,
this
know
is
what the
for
contract and agreement is.
Again,
and
Mr. Bradley,
the agreement
your
is.
understanding is
And
incorrect.
Your understanding is incorrect. The board
No,
has
Mr.
this
Bradley.
responsibility. That's why it's on the agenda, sir.
No,
But thank you
I'm
for
sorry.
trying. Thank you for trying. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item Q, I need a motion and a second to appoint the following delegates to the Carbon County Tax Collection Committee. Mr. Edward Rarick and Melanie Winhorn. Edward would be the delegate, Melanie would be the alternate delegate. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
First by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on motion Q? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Tenio.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yeah.
8 yes, motion carries.
Now, item R, I need a motion and a second to approve the Heighton Area High School to offer winter credit recovery program for students at a cost not to exceed $150 per class using the eLearn 21 system. There will be no cost to the district. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
I'll second it, Steve.
First by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland. Any questions on winter credit recovery? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Tenio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Dennis is absent. Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yeah.
8 yes, motion carries.
How many anticipated students do you guys have on this program?
That varies depending on the number of students that choose to take the credit as a recovery or have time to make it up, maybe in another year or the next semester.
Yeah,
But that varies.
How many do you think we have? Less than 10, more than 10?
I don't want to put a number to that, but I can get that information to the board.
Please do, because I'm concerned that the reason that they're needing recovery is because of the way we're providing in classroom versus remote learning. We don't want to leave anyone behind in that respect. And now you're billing individual students that fell behind. I don't mind them being accountable for their actions. However, we want to make sure we're not contributing to them and make sure that this program is not accelerating in its attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stern, before you read the next one, can I please ask a request? You have mentioned that the next motion is going to be about taking this refund check. Can you please add in the dollar amount to the motion so that it can be understood and transparent for the community?
Yes, we have the dollar amount.
Please read that into the reading so that the moving party can help. Thank you.
$662,552. Again, that's $662,552.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. So the motion, item S. Need a motion and a second to authorize a distribution of surplus funds from the Public School Health Insurance Cooperative to be refunded by check to Lehigh Area School District in the amount of $662,552. Need a
I
motion?
will make the motion, but I would like to say that this money comes because we are part of PSHIC, which is a consortium with other districts. This $600 is not a refund to us per se. I mean, it is, but it wasn't money that we paid them. It's whether or not the consortium needs that money to keep everybody's healthcare going. If there's catastrophic illness and stuff, it's not always going to be this much. We happen to be lucky with this amount.
Oh, honey, where did this money come from? Where did this money come from?
My vote is yes.
I know, but where did this money come from? Did this money come from our district, Rita?
Mr. Bradley, please again, the respect. Please
I
don't
do
refer to
respect, but
anyone.
come on, honey,
Please
honey's
do
got to
not
learn out.
respect-
Oh, honey, come
refer
on.
to anyone as
You
honey.
too. Oh, well, it's fine. It's a term of endearment.
No,
So-
Mr. Bradley, not the way it is by you.
That's
Please
a
show
shame.
some respect. Thank
I
you.
will show respect where it is due, and I think there was plenty and the appropriate amount applied. This money coming from our health insurance company cooperative is funds provided by those
We don't
that
have
pay
a
into the health.
motion and a second to discuss this topic, please.
Well, then why did you let her
join?
join in? I'm joining in on Rita's comment.
Motion and a second, please.
This is Nathan. I'll second.
The first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Fuller.
Now,
On this motion, Mr. Rarick, would you please explain where this money comes from so that we have the truth? Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure Ed and I will agree. The money comes from ultimately the people that pay to the insurance company. I'm sure they're not generous with their.
The request was by
Mr.
Mr. Rarick.
Oh, let's take a
Bradley,
look.
not
Okay, let's
you.
see what he says. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So my understanding of that money is the agreed upon payments into the system ended up being more than what was consumed by our constituents for that given time period. So therefore, that money is either left in there or it can be requested to be reimbursed.
Excellent. So to clarify that, Mr. Rarick, I greatly appreciate that. You seem not to be naive in this understanding. We, as one of the people in the consortium, paid in more money as a whole for the entire consortium than was consumed. So they asked for a certain amount, they used less, and now they're refunding back the overpayment to their constituency of the group in the consortium, or they will hold it for us, and I believe interest-free of this, again, over $500,000 of funds if we so elect to leave it with our vendor that we gave it to originally in excess of the amount that we normally need to give them. And exactly how much did we give them last year that this $662,000 was the excess? Do we know?
I don't know that figure off the top of my head, no.
Plus or minus a couple $1 million? I mean, was it 5 million, 10 million, 20 million?
Again, I don't know that figure off the top of my head. I can certainly research that and get a figure for the board.
How much was in our budget for the amount that we're paying into PSHIC?
Again, I'd have to look at that number. I do not know what was budgeted for that.
No problem. What did we budget for next year? Our budgets are going to be due at the end of this month, a couple days from now. Our preliminary budget. What do we have in the budget for next year? And does it include
Mr.
this
Bradley,
600?
our preliminary budget is not due the end of this month, just for clarification.
No problem. It's due to us, so we can do it. But either way, how much do we have budgeted for next year? And are we including this $660,000 extra in anticipation of having a good or bad year related to insurance benefits?
Well, I think you need to understand, we go off of what DSI gives us as a predictor for what our costs are going to be. Those are based on obviously historical data as well as what's going on in the healthcare industry. So again, we're not sitting here in the office predicting what our healthcare costs are going to be and putting that on a budget. That would be foolish of us as a district to do that. We contract with BSI to give us that data.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand some of that, but in the past, this district was in this BSI program under the same consortium, and we lost millions of dollars, sir. It was a historical event. We lost millions of dollars. We got out of this program because it cost us millions of dollars. And this $662,000 coming back, if I'm not mistaken, we pay in about $12 million.
Mr. Bradley, there was requests for money to be brought back to the district as discussed in the budget meeting. So there was no loss. The request was made by the business office to recoup that 2 years, and 1 year the request was made for it to stay in there. So there was, in 2 years, there was over $1 million that was sent back to the district.
Yeah, that was, again, overpayment. So for someone to hold all that money, millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, not collecting us interest, instead of us leaving in a banker or using a standard interest rate.
Mr. Bradley, this is being on the agenda, so you are able to see it. In the past, this was not even an item on the agenda. The business office handled it within themselves.
I agree.
This is an opportunity
for the public to see what's happening. Yep.
Exactly what the options are.
I agree. This
has not been awarded this opportunity in the past.
This is part of the
until Ms. Denicola came on and we were able to get back into the PSHIC consortium.
Okay.
I would like to point
so
out
at the
as
same
well
time,
that
hold on a second. I'm sorry, I'm talking. So I'd like to make the statement that yes, this is part of the. Let's try that again. This is part of the information that. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. This is part of the information that we're trying to make sure that our public can see, because it is transparency that we're bringing to this district. And in the past, you are correct. It was all hidden under the rug. I get it. But now you're seeing $660,000 that was held at a vendor, interest free, just like the $500,000 that was blind, lack of supervision. Those poor kids.
Mr. Bradley, this is monies that they just came to us and said are available in surplus. That's why we're pulling it back, and we're going to put it into our fund so we get interest on it. This did not happen the way in this process prior. So I would think you would say this is a good thing for the district and not a bad thing the way you're throwing your information around.
Well, I think it's a good thing that we're bringing it back, Larry. I will agree with that. However, I will also make the statement that was made in the Finance Committee meeting that you guys don't have control over your spending. You don't have control over your stuff. You've been spending more.
The insurance rate so therefore, that our provider tells us it's going to cost.
Yes, that's wrong.
And if we don't have those costs, we're getting a refund.
That's wrong, right? So
it's sort of what you do with the federal government when and if you pay your taxes.
There you go.
Kind of.
You're getting your money back.
Sometimes you overpay. Sometimes you underpay. That's if you pay.
And if you have a proper accounting program, you make sure that you're at that level where it should be close to even. And the fact that this district is part of the consortium where BSI is giving, you guys are bad. You're not doing your job.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli.
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz.
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers.
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley.
I'll answer in a second, but I want to make sure that we realize that this should be in a protected fund so that these guys with their willy-nilly spending doesn't use this money coming back without proper approval, oversight, and board approval. So I'll say yes, I do want my money from my vendor back. I don't want
Mr.
them
Nathan
holding it.
Bowler.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik.
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yeses. Motion carries.
Hey, Larry, how many schools were in this consortium and how much did they get back? Was it the same amount or was it prorated depending on what they paid in?
It's probably private information per district.
No, it's not actually. It's part of the consortium. They give you a report.
To those districts that get that money. Okay?
No. It's on our report that comes to the district saying what everyone in the consortium pays and what everyone got back. Why does this board not have that document, sir? You're supposed to make an informed decision. You're not informed. You're letting this information
Thank
be
you
held by the
very much,
administration.
Mr. President.
I am
On to
chastising
item
you
B,
the way the Auditor General
Motion and a
said,
second to
stop
approve the
being
tax
uninformed.
collector compensation resolution for the term January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2025, enclosure number 13. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
Motion by Mrs. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz to approve the tax collector compensation resolution for the term January 1, 2022 to December 31st, 2025. Any questions by board members on that resolution? Roll call vote, Ms. Bertino, please.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item U. A motion and a second to approve the cyber school agreement and terms between the Lehighton Area School District and Vision Quest National Ltd., known as Vision Quest. The cost of the program will be recovered by billing the appropriate school districts of participating students. Enclosure number 14. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second by
I'll
Nate.
second that motion. Steve?
I have a first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Holland. Any questions on that agreement with Vision Quest? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item V, I need a motion and a second to approve the new affiliation agreement between Lehighton Area School District and the Lincoln Technical Institute, name change of the program, for the purpose of providing experiential learning for education students for the 2021 school year, enclosure number 15.
So moved.
And a second, please. Sorry about that. And I have a first by Mrs. Spinelli,
Second, Wayne.
second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on that agreement? Roll call vote, Ms. Bertino, please.
Mr. David Bradley,
I'm going to abstain, lack of information. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
On the personnel, item A, motion and a second to approve the athletic hires as recommended by the athletic committee and extracurricular hires for the 2021 school year, enclosure number 16.
So moved. Steve?
Second, Wayne.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz on the approval of those hires. Any questions?
Are these both existing hires already at the school district's payroll or school district's employee?
The majority of them are
Are any of
currently
them
in
new?
that role. As extracurricular and athletic hires are every year. We have their hires every year.
So let's check. Head baseball, Corey Schaefer. Is he a current employee of the district prior to this head baseball coach position?
He is not a current employee.
How about David Yob?
They are
Mr.
coaches.
Cleaver, can you advance the agenda, please?
I'm sorry. They are coaches.
Yeah, I
Ms.
know. They're
Pagada
coaching-
is,
so he's-
Ms.
he's
Pagada
already
is
just-
a professional educator for the district.
And how about Erica Pagado?
That, yeah, she is currently a professional educator for the district,
So-
currently is our head cross-country coach as well.
So did they apply for these jobs as
The
extracurricular
jobs are
activities?
posted, they're required to be posted, and this, requests for the positions are sent to our athletic director, Mr. Spots, and they're reviewed with administration before the recommendation is
But
made.
do they physically fill out an application? Do we accept applications for these positions?
Oh, yes, if someone from out of the district would be interested, they could as well.
But did,
So
did these people?
these jobs are posted on our district website.
Thank you. But did these people fill out a physical job application for the district for this position?
As far as an application, it would go to Mr. Spots where they would fill out information. They are still required to get all their clearances, so they would fill out all that information. And if they are a current employee of the district, it is just that they are reapplying.
Correct. So this application,
They submit a letter they submit a letter of application that they are interested for the position.
excellent. So when I did a right to know seeking the applications of people that got hired within the district, and we agree that within the right to know process, only those that get hired are allowed to be provided under the right to know to all citizens throughout the entire United States of America. But as a board member, the fact that we have people applying for a position and these board members don't even see the applications to whom they have to choose from being applied, and then they show up on an agenda, you don't have the information to make an accurate decision as a director, and that lack of information is keeping blinders on. And I know that Larry Stern has been on this board for many years. I don't know, are you doing this on purpose, Larry, or what's your thought there? Larry, I'm asking you specifically.
Mr. Stern, I have no comment. We went over the application process.
I'm asking for you, Larry, no comment. How about you, Steve? You're on the athletic committee. Did you review all the applicants? Or just did someone tell you to pick these guys?
Mr. Stern,
Steve?
do we
Steve,
have?
I'm going to ask Steve. You can do. Wait, I'm asking. Hold on. I'm asking a board member.
badgering.
Not badgering. We're asking a question of Larry. We're asking a committee meeting question of Stephen Holland.
Vote, Ms. Bertinio, please.
Rush it through, rubber stamp it. But the reality is, Steve, you're on the committee. Wayne, come on, Unky Wayne, you're on the committee. Did you
Mr.
review the
Nathan
applications? Wayne, come on, Wayne. Did
Mr.
you look at any
Nathan
of these
Fuller?
people?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
No.
Mr. David Bradley?
Abstention for lack of information. And not only that, Larry, why are you cutting off? We're asking a committee member for information on a motion. You have the responsibility. It's not ignorant. I want to know. The ignorance would be not. It's not ignorant.
Call people names and you.
It's ignorant to not have the information prior to making a decision. You're ignorantly making an information. You're making unaware. The Auditor General chastised you for this. They
5
chastised you for
yes,
this.
2 no, 1 abstention.
And you're still
Motion
doing
carries.
it.
On
Larry, you're
item
still
B
doing
under
it.
personnel, I need a motion and a second to approve the following request for pre-approval of courses and programs to study for continuing education for the 2 listed employees. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Ms. Spinelli. Any question on the coursework? None. Roll call vote, Mrs. Pertinio, please.
Mr. Nathan Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item C, I need a motion and a second to acknowledge FMLE leaves for the following employees not to exceed 12 weeks. Item listed there 1 through 3. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
I'll second it, Steve.
I have a motion by Mr. Wentz, second by Mr. Holland. Any question on FMLA leaves? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Please.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
To item D, I need a motion and a second to accept the intent to retire for the following professional employees effective the end of 2021 school year under the terms and of the respective contract with the eligibility of all retirement benefits. Number one, Beth Cressley, elementary teacher, 34 years of service. Number two, Melanie Dillman, elementary teacher, 35 years of service. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Fuller. Any comments on the retirements?
Can I make one comment? This is Steve.
Mr. Holland?
I'd like to thank both of these teachers for all the years of service that they've given Lehighton Area School District. But I hope when we pick the next two people to take their place, as good as Beth and Melanie are, I hope we get even better. But thank you very much for your service and the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Steve, what do you mean by they? Who's they picking? Steve, you said they. You hope when they
It's
pick.
unfortunate, Mr. Holland.
Steve,
I do
who's they?
apologize for Mr. Bradley, but
I don't
also-
apologize for me. I don't need to apologize.
I would also like to publicly thank them for their years of service.
I know. I'd like to
think
thank
it
them, but
is-
it's great. They did a great job. But
Again.
who's they? Steve, who's they?
Mr. Bradley, can you please allow us to
You're
thank
muting
the
me,
individuals?
Mr. Cleaver. I'm happy to
So
speak
I would
over you.
like to
Mr. Bradley, could you please behave yourself?
I am. I'm asking
I
Steve
would
who
like
they
to
were.
thank them.
I
would
did.
like to thank them for their years of service. I know they worked as teammates together for many years in different buildings, and they did a great job. And again, I want to wish them well, and that they are retiring at the same time as well. There's a lot of collaboration and communication between them two over the years. And again, like Mr. Holland did say, they will be greatly missed.
I'd also like to congratulate them on their retirement. I had the privilege of having one of my daughters in their classroom for a year, and yes, they worked fabulously together. And to me, we're a great example of what the educators in our district are and how much they care about the students. I congratulate them both on their retirement, but they will be greatly missed in our district.
I too would like to congratulate them on their retirement and the collection of Peasers. I think it's a wonderful program, guaranteed by the state and the taxpayers. I think they did a fantastic job. It is fantastic, and I hope that this
Mr.
board
Bradley,
picks my turn.
please
I'm being
stop
nice.
with the
I think that the
rude
board.
and ignorant
It's not rude
comments.
or ignorant.
You know
I think
exactly
the board,
what you're doing.
I
and
think
it's
the
a
board.
shame that you are doing this, and I
Why do you think
apologize
so?
to everyone in the public.
I'm going to apologize for you.
Most
Mr.
importantly,
Cleaver.
I apologize to Ms. Cressley and Ms. Dillman for the nonsense that they have to hear during this meeting by Mr. Bradley.
Absolutely not nonsense. We very much congratulate them. They're doing a fantastic job, and I hope that when this board selects people to replace them, that this board reviews all the applicants so that we can again find some of the best people to serve our students. Thank you. And we can end the rubber stamping that Steve's been doing.
Roll call, Ms. Bertinio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes, with regrets.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes, two great teachers are going to be missed.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes, with no regrets. I think it's awesome that they made it to retirement. Thank you. Great job.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes, I just want to reiterate Mr. Cleaver's sentiments there, and the entire board or myself. These two teachers go 35 years. They will be missed. And again, my sentiments are that I'm actually ashamed of the comments by some of the board, actually not some of the board members, by Mr. Bradley concerning their retirement. On to item E. I need a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to hire the following employees in accordance with the respective contracts, items numbers 1 through 5. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second.
I have a first by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Fuller. A question on these hires?
I have a question, Mr. Holland. I see we're hiring a full-time utility custodian. We had 2 custodians retire during this year. Are we not gonna fill the second position?
And Mr. Spots actually did discuss that with me. I said I'd like to get information, discuss it at Buildings and Grounds. One of the other things we discussed is temporarily moving one of the part-time hours back to make it so that 2 individuals are at the building at the same time during the second shift. That was brought up, I believe, as well by Mr. Spots.
Mr. Cleaver, were these individuals that we are hiring filed an application for their employment, and were the other people that the employment applications that applied for these jobs given to the board for their review prior to this decision?
No, there was not. There was committees, as has been in the past, that was formed. The interviews were conducted and the recommendations are being made here this evening.
So we have a personnel committee again, now visiting and meeting in public within the Sunshine Act?
There is no personnel committee meeting that I am aware
So
of.
what committee were you talking about?
The interview committee, who are employees of the district.
So employees of the district are interviewing these people, they're separating them out, and then providing their picks, government lobbying their board
We are
to
giving
select these individuals.
recommendations to the
Yep,
board, so you can either
recommendations.
vote yes
So
or
they
no
meet, so they
on the
meet,
recommendations.
they meet, and then they make recommendations to a government agency. So they meet in a group in an effort to make recommendations to a government agency. And that process is blind to this board. Only the results of that process is available to this board. And you do not find any violation of the Sunshine Act. Can we get Mr. Filer to check on that for us?
No,
One
I
of
do
these-
not, and I believe.
I
Mr.
do.
Fowler-
Sure,
I do.
Mr. Bradley.
I would love to
Discussing
get Mr. Fowler-
personnel.
I wanna bring it to
executive
respond.
session.
It's
Which does
executive
not have
session.
to
I
be
agree.
advertised or open to the public.
I agree. It's an executive session. It does not, hold on, don't mute me, sir. Here, I'll unmute me back. Mr. Filer, I agree with what you said. Please say it one more time so everybody can hear that it's an executive session.
There is no executive session, Mr.
That's not what
Bradley.
I said, Mr. Bradley.
Then repeat it. Mr. Cleaver, so I apologize for Mr. Cleaver's behavior. He was over talking you. Please tell us, as our solicitor for the board, please tell us how this process works so that we can make sure that we are not violating the Sunshine Act and that every board member, as an oversight authority, duly elected official, can participate in these meetings so that they can be informed prior to coming to this board meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley, we went over this several times. You do not have to have open meetings when you're discussing personnel matters.
It can be an executive session, but does the board, individual members,
But it's
have
not a
access?
meeting of the board.
I didn't
It's
say it
not
was
a
a
board
meeting of the board.
committee.
It's a committee, but does the board have the authority to
There is
attend
no
the
committee.
meeting?
It's not
Mr.
a
Bradley.
board committee.
It's not a board committee, so there's just a lobbyist committee. It's an external committee. It's not our employees. It's not part of our government agency. It's not our government employees. It's an external lobbyist group
Mr. Stern, we
deciding
have
who
had
gets
this
hired by this
discussion
district.
time and time again.
I'm Mr. Filer, please identify this specific part of the law.
Mr. Bradley, I do not agree with anything you just said.
Okay, so let me hear what you say. Ready? I say
Stern?
that if it's, hold on, we're talking to
Mr.
the
Stern,
solicitor.
can we please move
No,
forward?
no, we don't want to rush this through, Mr. Cleaver. We want to understand that we're not breaking the law.
Mr. Bradley, you
We
do
wanna
not
make
get
sure-
the
You're not
answer
breaking
that
the
you
law.
fear, and you cannot handle that.
I
And
want to
it's
make sure.
unfortunate.
Hold on.
We
I want to make sure
going
we're not breaking the law.
to make
Are you
the-
telling me that an external committee?
Okay, roll
can
call
make-
vote, Mr.
Mr.
Tenio, please.
Larry,
Thank you,
we're
Mr.
asking a
Stern.
question of this board.
Mr. Bradley, you've had your answer.
No, you did not have your answer. You got
Yes,
part
we
of an
do
answer.
have your answer.
No, you got part of an answer.
Heard
You
it,
said a
it's not
committee.
the answer you want to hear. The education,
Exactly.
the educators and administration of this district do the vetting and hiring or a recommendation to hire of the best candidates in the pools of those who have applied to the positions.
And is that recommendation to a board part of the agency?
Mr. Stern, again,
Mr. Filer, according to, is that part of the agency?
Mr. Bradley, you
a
continue to
committee-
ask questions is not going to change the response you're getting from
Roll
Mr.
call
Fowler.
vote.
But the
Mrs.
nice thing is,
Berteo, please. Thank you, Mr.
it's
Cleaver.
going to make sure that we understand that the Sunshine Act.
The only one who doesn't understand is you, Mr. Bradley.
Mr. Cleaver, read the Sunshine Act. It says an agency or committee thereof. is responsible. So if this is a committee of this agency, every
Again,
board member
sorry,
has the
Mr.
right to
Bruno, that was
attend
my
a
fault. I
meeting.
apologize.
You're doing these blind and hidden from your board. That's wrong. It's favoritism. It's a lobbyist
you.
group. If it's a lobbyist group, it's a lobbyist group. But you're
Thank
saying
you.
it's an agency and a committee of
Again,
the
that
agency.
was
So therefore,
speaking
Mr.
of the board.
Filer, if I'm
Roll
not
call
mistaken,
vote, Ms.
they're
Virginia.
Do not
responsible.
misquote me.
I will not misquote you. I want to ask you the question. If they are a committee, an authorized committee of this government agency,
Again,
they're
I
part of the
believe the
Sunshine
roll
Act.
call
and
vote was requested.
Wait a second. Mr. Cleaver, stop shutting him off. He's going to speak. Mr. Cleaver.
No one is
Mr.
speaking
Filer,
except
I know.
you.
Mr. Filer, under the Sunshine Act, the definition of agency is a committee thereof. If this government agency is creating a committee that's making recommendations to the board has the authority to attend those meetings. Is that correct,
No.
sir? Why not?
Because you're not required to go to every committee.
It's a committee. And they
Again,
make
Mr. Stern,
recommendations.
the same answer,
Why?
just you can't
No,
handle it.
why aren't they allowed to attend?
Because they're discussing personnel matters, Mr. Bradley.
So why isn't the board
That's
allowed to attend?
exempt from discussion under the Sunshine Act.
Correct. It doesn't need
More
sunshine.
importantly,
I'm asking a board
in
member.
order to comply with the Sunshine Act, you have to give the public a chance to comment before official action by the board. That is what is happening at this very moment.
Right, but the board member, the authority,
Yeah, Mr. Stern,
can
please.
attend wait, the board
We're going to
member can-
continue with the roll call vote. Sorry for the
Mr.
public
Stern, the
disruption.
board
Roll call
member
vote, Ms.
can
Virginio,
attend
please.
these committee members.
Mrs.
committee
Rita
meetings.
Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
No, and I'd like Mr. Fowler to identify whether or not the board is excluded from these meetings
Mr.
or they're
Nathan
allowed to
Fuller.
attend. Please don't cut
Yes.
me off. I'm talking to our solicitor.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no, motion passes.
Mr. Filer,
On to item
let's
F.
answer. Wait, Mr. Filer, let's get an
Need a
answer.
motion and a
Larry,
second
let's get
to
an
approve
answer.
Ashley Lichtenwalner
Larry,
as
let's
the
get an answer.
ELA Department Chair for the 2021 school year, effective December 1, 2020, with stipend as per contractual rate. I need a motion and a second, please.
Let me get-
Wayne.
Second, Steve.
I have a motion by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland. Any questions concerning Ashley Lichtenwalner and ELA Department Chair?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Filer. Mr. Filer, are the government duly elected public officials legally excluded from those committee meetings to which employee hiring is being discussed?
This is not the topic.
I understand,
Stern.
Stern,
F,
step aside,
which
Stern,
is the,
step aside. I'm asking a
appointment
question of our
Ashley
solicitor.
Lichtenwalner as the ELA Department Chair. Is there any comments on that particular item?
Could you be
Motion
any
F.
less professional? Look, we have a question. Are the board members
You
excluded?
be any less professional. We've moved
Larry,
on. We've told you
moved
what
on.
you didn't want to hear.
Bullied me. You bullied
and
me.
you continue to badger
You bullied
everyone
me.
about it.
I just want an answer. Can the board members attend these committee meetings? And are they authorized to attend them? Or are they excluded from
They
attending
are
them?
not committee meetings. That has been said time and time again.
But it's making a recommendation to the board, and it is a committee meeting because you said it was a committee meeting. However, what is it? It's just a lobbyist group?
Any comment on item
Is it a lobbyist
F?
group? Are lobbyists picking who we're hiring?
Roll
Or is
call
the
vote on
government
item
picking who
F,
we're
Ms.
hiring?
Pertinio, please.
Larry, you can't shove them up, man. Come on,
Mr.
Larry. You gotta
Wayne
get a
Wentz?
question. You can't be blind.
Yes.
Bud.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
I want an answer from our solicitor, but yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
My apologies to Ashley concerning the vote on this particular item. Yes.
8 yeses, motion passes.
On to item G, I need a motion and a second to accept the resignation of the following employees, 1 through 4. Motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve.
Second, Wayne.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz on the resignations. Any questions from the board on the resignations?
Are we going to conduct exit interviews of these individuals?
Mr. Bradley, as we said before, they have the opportunity for an exit interview. Rachel Atwood, you can see there, was just approved from a part-time to a full-time position. Miss Fiala was approved as a neighboring district for Spanish teacher. And then the assistant cheerleading coach is resigning for personnel matters. And also Amelia Barnhold is leaving for a teaching position.
Any further comment? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes?
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
The miscellaneous, I need a motion and a second to approve Edward Rarick to the appointment of board secretary effective January 26, 2021. Motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second, Rita.
First by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Any comment on item A under miscellaneous? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes?
Mr. Larry Stern. 8 yes, motion carries.
Before I read item B, I have a question. In our packet, there are dates for meetings other than the committee meeting. Oh, committee meeting dates. Okay, you have it. I thought I read that. I read that incorrectly. I'm sorry. Need a motion and a second to approve the revised committee meeting dates enclosure number 17 for buildings and grounds, academic affairs, and athletic meeting dates. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I have a second by Ms. Spinelli. I'm not sure who was first.
That was Nathan. That was me.
Nathan, thank you, Mr. Fuller. First by Mr. Fuller, second by Ms. Spinelli on the changing of these dates. Any comments from the board, please? Roll call vote, please, Ms. Pertinio.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes?
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On the programs, I need a motion and a second to approve the use of school property for items 1 through 5. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Steve.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz on the approve the use of school property for items 1 through 5. Any questions on those activities? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes?
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, motion carries.
On to item B, under programs, I need a motion and a second to approve the second and final reading of the approval, second reading and final approval of the policy of the following Lehigh Area School District policies Number 122, extracurricular activities. Number 123, interscholastic athletics. Number 805, emergency preparedness and response. And number 805.1, relations with law enforcement agencies. Excuse me. Need a motion and a second, please.
Prior to making any of these motions, I think this should all be tabled. The public has not had a proper opportunity, given the environment to which these policies are being discussed in these policy committee meetings, and they're being silenced, especially when it comes to the relationships with law enforcement, how guns will be applied, how guns will be carried, what the arresting officers can do to our students. We originally hired enforcement officers to protect the students from external threats, the way security officers do, and then we changed it to law enforcement, that we're now adding a police state inside of our school district. And these new policies should be vetted by the public before the public decides whether or not they want to put their community students under that regime. Thank you. I think the whole thing should be tabled. I move that we table this motion until such time that we can have in-person meetings of the policy committee meeting, so that these things can be vetted and reviewed by the public, so they can have their town square, as Rita's been blocking, and they can have comment and they can have discussion prior to making new laws that their students and their families will be held accountable to. Can I get a second for that motion to postpone?
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor to table the vote on these policies. Any comments? My comment is these policies have been public for 4 months, and we've received no input from any board member on how they should be changed, any wording. And I think it's just delaying the fact of getting our policies into place.
Hey, Larry, who wrote these policies? Did this board write them, or did some other external lobbyist group write them?
These policies have been revised as from recommendations from PSBA, who is probably the foremost authority on school policy.
And a known lobbyist organization, and filed.
According to your
according to
a lobbyist for public school and public education. Yes, I would say that.
Yeah, they're definitely a lobbyist. They're lobbying you to accept and.
Okay, I'm not going to deliberate this fact with you on what the PSBA is, Mr. Bradley.
Actually, a board meeting.
I know, all I do know is that you denigrated the PSBA many, many times publicly. So
Thank you.
I know you don't like them. So that's your main cause for not applying any of these policies, is that they come from another source that you don't appreciate. So,
Larry, you mentioned you don't want to publicly debate this. So the question becomes is, why are you stopping public debate in a board meeting of the community? Isn't that where public debate is supposed to take place?
I think the debate was with you, Mr. Bradley.
Okay, I believe the debate was with, yes, exactly, Mr. Cleaver. There's a motion and a second to
But there's
table.
a debate.
Is there any other comment on tabling these particular policies?
To stymie debate is to reduce the amount of transparency within this government agency.
There is no other
accepting new
comment,
laws.
Mr. Stern, being.
Roll call vote on tabling the policies to be a yes to table, a no to not table. Thank you very much.
Mr. David Bradley,
I believe it should be tabled, and the public should have an opportunity to witness debate of the board government that they have elected.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
No, do not table. We've had plenty of time to review it.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
No.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes, table.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
No, again, everyone has had plenty of time to go through this.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
No.
Ms. Joy Beers,
yes,
Mr. Larry Stern.
No.
3 yes, 5 no, motion fails.
Again, back to item D, I need a motion and a second to approve the second and final second reading and final approval of the following Lehighton Area School District policies that I mentioned earlier. A motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any further comment on these particular policies? Roll call vote, please, Ms. Patino.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstention, lack of proper information, informed public, and adding new laws to the district under the LASD policy, the violation of 001.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern,
Yeah.
5 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention, motion passes.
On to old business, is there any old business to discuss? Hearing none, I'll be on to new business. Any items for new business?
I have 3.
Please proceed.
Ms. Pertinio, do you have access to your email, and did you receive the email with the new business motions on them?
When would have these been sent, Mr. Bradley?
During this meeting, I sent them just recently.
I think that it would be actually probably a violation and unfair for us to discuss any motions that you would have brought into this meeting at this point in time, because the rest of the board could not have been properly prepared for that.
Finally we agree on something, Mr. Stern. However, see, the rules are that it is new business. Things happen during a meeting. There's a motion that can come on the meeting. It can be tabled and reviewed for the future motions. It's great. I like that idea as well. Actually, after it's moved and seconded or maybe to be tabled, might be a great idea, Larry. You can actually have public debate, and that's what this part of the agenda is for, so that the public can watch their government in action. And I'd like to make these motions. I just wanted to see if Janine had them, it would be easier than her to try to dictate them from me from when I say them. But, so my question was to her. Ms. Partenio, do you have the motions that I sent on an email? Do you have access to them?
Yes, I do see them, Mr. Bradley.
Oh, awesome. So I'll read them and tell me if I misspeak in what I've sent, but let's make sure it's right. The first one, I have 3. I move the board provides the agenda 5 days in advance of the customary Thursday's release, so the board and community that we serve the ability to formally ask the board to acquire information needed to make informed decisions. Can I have a second on a motion to make sure that the board agenda, proposed agenda, is given to the board and public 5 days in advance of the customary Thursday before the meeting? Can I get that motion, please? Seconded.
I'll second it.
God bless you, Gail. Thank you.
We have a first by Mr. Bradley, a second by Ms. Mahalik to get the information out on 5 business days, 5 days before. I don't think you clarified.
I'll accept the clarification. I'm happy with 5 calendar days. However, in the past, under Gloria Bowman's tutelage, the answer was 5 days prior to the meeting. I think that's obviously too short because you guys picked Thursday, and now we need 5 days prior to the Thursday. So actually, you're kind of looking at 10 days before the meeting. But I'm happy with 5 days before the 5 days. I don't care if it's calendar. I don't care if it's business days. I'm happy with either. We're moving the bar closer to transparency, and we're moving the bar away from the spanking that we took from the Auditor General for making uninformed decisions. You know, and the public can now comment on this motion, and I'd like, since David Kraus, hold on, the David Kraus can join in on this concept, and Gloria can join this concept, because information is valuable. They got caught big time in that Auditor General's report, making some really uninformed decisions. So this might just help our community provide better governance.
Hey, I'd like to comment on this recommendation. Number one, I don't want to speak. I do not have the policy in front of me, but I believe our policy does dictate the amount of days prior to the board meeting that information is sent to the board. I would definitely want to make sure this recommendation is not breaking any policy. The other one that would concern me is where this would put us for payment of bills, because currently we do receive a number of bills up until the last minute for this information that is presented. So that may affect payment of bills as well, but that is something that we would have to look at. But number one, I just wanted to make sure that this recommendation from Mr. Bradley is not against any current board policy.
I'm on the policy committee. I checked. It is not. So the agenda is created by the president
Mr. Bradley,
of the board.
since
and
you
it's
just brought it
Mr.
up, I
Cleveland.
don't know
Why-
that the
Listen,
other
see, I don't
board
trust
had
you, though.
time to.
See, I don't trust you. See, I don't trust you. So it's
No,
okay.
but
You
I
can
don't
just-
think
you
the
can-
board had time to review that to make sure
I know
your
that.
statement is
It's a
correct.
shame.
All I'm
I
bringing
did
it up
as a
is
board member.
because
But go ahead.
apparently you sent
Postpone
this
it.
at 9:08 today.
Postpone it. Postpone it. I love it.
for a
Postpone it
vote
for next month.
this evening.
Postpone it. But the reality is your statement is a lie. You just bad. So the reality is currently you're not paying some bills 4 and 5 months after they're due. It's a shame. We do want to get on a better schedule. I think that responsibility is there. We want to get on a better schedule to review the invoices to make sure that we're not $500,000 behind. We want to make sure these students are supervised. We want to make sure that this government agency.
Mr. Bradley, my
oversees
comment was
properly.
directly towards the agenda item that you just presented today to the board at 9:08
Is there any other,
PM.
thank you,
great.
Mr. Cleaver. Is there any other comment
Provide the
on Mr.
agenda.
Bradley's agenda item?
To provide the.
Nathan, my
agenda
concern is
finance events.
the same thing of how it would affect the timeline of payment of
Ms.
bills.
Bose?
Yeah, new business is exactly that, new business, and it can be brought up at any time under new business. What was stated before that it came in late, the email was just sent, should it be considered is ridiculous. It's new business for discussion. Now, if you want to table it and look into it further, somebody make that motion. That's all you have to do.
But
No
Barb,
other
hold
comment.
on. But Barb, I'd really like to hear your thought on getting the information earlier so the public has an opportunity to review it. That's
There
what
is
this
no
motion's
other
about.
comment.
Barb, can you please,
Mr. Bradley.
she has her hand open.
Or Mr.
I'm
Stern,
asking
sorry.
hold on. Barb Bose has her hand raised. I'd like her comment on the idea of getting the information 5 days in advance of the customary Thursday release. Can we please allow Barb, who has her hand raised, to make a
That is
comment on
correct.
that?
Hey, Dave, I can talk. Yes, I would like to get it sooner. I could go through it more thoroughly. Obviously, I go through it. And yes, it would behoove everyone to get it sooner. I don't know how many people look at it other than me. And the people in the board, but yeah, that would make it easier. I understand the issue with the bills. I don't know how to solve that one. But it should all be looked into and get it out as soon as possible prior to the meeting.
There are no other requests for comment, Mr. Stern.
Roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please. Current policy says 3 days prior to the board meeting, just for information.
3 days?
Yes, sir.
So basically,
Read
this
the
will make it a
motion,
full
Mr.
8.
Tenio.
So this would make it a full 8. Yeah, we definitely want to.
That's not what you're, no.
Repeat
you're-
the-
Five
Reread it,
days
please.
before the 3 days. Yeah, you guys are calling 3 days because it's Thursday night, Friday, and Monday. They're the 3 days you're picking. That's funny.
No, okay, you know what? Read the motion, Ms. Bertinio, and we'll run a roll call vote directly after that. Thank you.
The motion is that the board provides the agenda 5 days in advance of the customary Thursday release, so the board and community reserve the ability to formally ask the board to acquire information needed to make an informed decision. Mr. David Bradley,
Yes, thank you. And great reading.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
No.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
My answer is no. I thought it said new business for discussion. I didn't know we were going to be voting on anything. So my answer will be no.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
No.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
No.
Miss Joy Beers, Ms. Joy Beers, Mr. Larry Stern.
No.
2 yes, 5 no, motion fails.
Thank you. The second motion?
Next item from Mr. Bradley.
No, no,
The
I'm
next
gonna read, hold
item
on.
says
Hold
a
on, wait.
motion that the board censures Larry Stern and Rita Spinelli for their failures to take corrective actions for items found and documented in the Auditor General's report related to the need for the board to make fully informed decisions.
I'll second that.
Who first did the item, please?
Apparently you wanted to read it, so you did.
I think I did not. I
Oh,
don't care.
okay,
I can
then I'll-
first
then
it.
I'll
I'll
first
second
it.
it. I don't care.
I'll first
Let's
it.
just get it over with.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I should first. it.
Mr. Bradley, you
And you
can
can
first.
second it.
I'll do the second on that.
Excellent. So
video,
that means you
okay?
get to, you have to vote for it at the time.
Any
of-
comments on the agenda item?
I'd like to make one.
Well, blurt it out. That's what you usually do.
Okay, so the Auditor General wrote a multi-page report related to the need for this board to make informed decisions. We have several people that are in this board meeting now that were on the board back then that we can ask what they meant by that, because we have found that $3 million went out the door. We found that we were paying stipends for things. We found that millions of dollars was being spent on different items that weren't really gaining a benefit. Pennsylvania school code was neglected in ways that the budget was applied. We had students being injured. There's all sorts of things that took place within our district, and it all revolved around the lack of government authority, board of directors duly elected to oversee the administration and this government agency, and their failure to make informed decisions. The Auditor General's report documented this, and I'm glad you seconded it, Larry, because that means you have to vote for it, or you're gonna have to pull your second. I wished Rita would have done the same, because
No, it
it's
does
because
not.
of your. Oh, it doesn't? Thank you. Oh, you joined in. Thanks, Mr. Filer. Are we allowed to attend the committee meeting?
Any other comments?
So that's the idea, is that we want to get this information. so that
Mr.
this
Stern, there
board
is
is
no
not
other
making-
comments being requested at this time during it for this motion.
Yeah, but I was finishing
mine.
my grandstanding, Mr. Cleaver, before you cut me off. So we want to make informed decisions. It's a responsibility to make informed decisions. I think that 5 days that you just blocked to get extra information allows us to ask the administration what information we would need to make an
How
informed
does this
decision.
apply to censoring me, sir?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I think you jumped back an agenda item. How does that, with your comment, just
No,
there
it's about
5
censoring
days,
you,
how does that
because you're
apply
the
to
one-
censoring me, sir?
Because you're being censured because you're the president of the board.
Again, there
And
are
Rita's
no
the
other-
treasurer that
and there are no
blocks,
other- roll
that
call
blocks,
vote, Ms.
that blocks
Virginia,
the
please.
need for given information.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
No.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Again, no, I thought we were under discussion only. Apparently, Mr. Bradley didn't see it stops at discussion. Thank you.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
No,
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
No.
Miss Joy Beers, Miss Joy Beers, Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
No.
2 yes, 5 no, motion fails. The next motion was that the agency assign monthly personnel committee meetings and assign board members to the committee.
We currently already have an assigned personnel committee.
Motion dies for lack of first or second. On to director's concerns.
I have a comment. This is Steve.
Okay, let's go to courtesy of the floor, or, okay, Steve, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Under Director's Concerns, I want to thank again everyone in the Heighton Area School District for the fine job that they're doing, that we're keeping our students in classes, where I've seen where others still haven't started some of their classes. So thank everyone, nurses, all support staff, teachers, the professional staff. Thank you very, very much for the job that you're doing. That's it.
Well said, Steve. On the courtesy of the floor, public comment, any hands raised?
Courtesy of the floor for public? Yes, we have several. Ms. Bose?
Yeah,
Ms.
can
Bo-
you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I just like to say, I have some other things to speak on, but Steve, new business for discussion has historically brought forth motions that were voted on. You can go back and read the minutes, it's there. Now, as far as when you agreed to accept the minutes, particularly the one for November, there was an error in the bills paid. You did not include the credit card that was paid. It was about $6,000. That should have been corrected prior to you accepting those minutes. The other thing is, has the annual audit been completed?
The yearly audit firm has been here. They came, I believe it was the first week in January and spent some time the second week. So they have been here collecting the information, and we are planning to get that report completed as soon as we get their information submitted back to us.
Well, my question on that is, the first year they were hired late. They were not hired late this year. Why is it not being done prior to October? I mean, it should have been done already.
This year with the transition, I could, say that we did use information from Mr. Surridge and Mr. Rarick have been here working with them. So that was part of it. That was also part of the request that we asked for a continuance for that. So that was part of it this year. And again, I think the biggest thing, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Rarick, but if he has anything else to chime in, we did not want to put down just information and numbers to say that it was completed. We want everything complete and accurate as much as possible. And that's why we, feel it was important to wait for those auditors to get their information to us too.
So you don't know if there were any other issues found at this point?
At this point, I'm not aware of, Mr. Rarick. I don't know that they made you aware of, but I'm not aware of any at this point.
Okay.
No, they have not brought anything to my attention.
Hey, Barb, I actually talked to the auditors. They were restricted from coming to the district until January by the administration. Why, I have no idea. I think this board should hold the administration accountable. The fact that we lost
Mr.
months
Bradley, there was no
of
restriction.
information.
There was no restriction.
Was there an invitation for them to come?
They let us know when they are available. We talked to them. They gave us the dates that they were available. So please don't say there was.
Well, there was a restriction because they
No,
were
there
supposed
is
to come
not.
in.
You
They were
are
supposed to be there.
totally out of line and inaccurate.
I'm not sure
and
about
making
that. I think
false
this board
statements.
should investigate that. We should look at
Barb,
when
do
you
you have
invited
anything
them.
else to say,
Mr.
Barb?
Larry, can we please find out because
Barb,
the
do you have
end of the
anything
school
else to
year,
say?
Yes,
Larry,
I do.
All right,
we
sorry,
have a
Ms.
lawful
Bose.
requirement.
All right. Let's see if I can remember. Oh, preliminary budget. When is the special meeting to accept the preliminary budget going to be held?
We do not currently have any special meeting assigned for preliminary budget.
Well, don't you have to,
We
Do
voted
that.
not to go above the index, so that timeline changes.
Well, I know it changes the fact that you don't have to publish it 20 days in advance. I'm not sure it changes the timeline for accepting it. However, I will make sure I reread the law on that. Eric Filer, Mr. Filer, can you comment on that?
I suppose I can get back to you. I don't know the days off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any from the public?
Yes. Ms. Salerno? Ms. Salerno?
Hi.
Yes.
Earlier this evening, myself and a few others had a very hard time logging on to the Zoom from the email you sent us. I don't know who's in charge of it, but somebody may want to check with Zoom. I actually had to change my password, and so did a couple others in order to get on. I've had my Zoom account for 5 years with the same password and never had to do that. So I did want to say something earlier, so it may be not in the right place now, but the first thing is the school board actually investigating, I don't know if that's the right word, the parents clubs and extracurricular activities as far as monies and what they do with their monies and stuff? Or is it just a particular school board member who's searching out that information?
I believe that falls under the right to know, so that would be the individual. I believe all compliance was sent out to the parties requesting information that was requested for that right to know. So that's not the school board, that's the individual. School board does not, the right to knows are all by that individual, not by school board.
Okay, thank you. And the next thing is, and it was kind of brought up earlier, and this is what I wanted to say. As a parent in this district, and my oldest is 26, so we've been around a while, I feel confident that if there's a problem in the school, it's taken care of. I feel confident if there's something that the school can't take care of, it's taken care of by whoever needs to be, whether that be law enforcement, whether that be the DA's office, whatever. I've asked numerous times not to be put on emails. I continue to get put on emails. An email that came through the other day specifically brought Mr. Fisher's name out in public from a school board member. I don't understand how, as an individual, let alone a school board member, you can call people out by name and not be worried about retaliation or being sued, because wouldn't the school district be responsible if a school board member is sued for defamation of character or, in instance, calling people honey? That's sexual harassment in 2021. And my oldest son had Mr. Fisher, and everybody makes mistakes. Everybody on this phone call, on this Zoom call, everybody makes mistakes. And to be bringing it up years and years and years later, it's just wrong. And then the hazing incident that keeps coming up, unless you have a child involved in it, nobody should have anything to say, because, again, I feel confident what could be done was done. Does School Board Director Dave Bradley harass the DA's office about this subject? Because I would assume, as a person of knowledge, because I know people that were involved in the situation, the parents of whatever, if it was something that should have been taken further, that's up to the DA's office. Again, I and many parents support our teachers, our administrators, our superintendent, and everyone. And it's just, it has to stop. All it's just putting fuel on the fire and try to get people who have no knowledge of anything surmising what might be happening. Oh my God, is my child in danger? No, your child's not in danger. And if your child is in danger, that person is going to be gone from the situation. So I just hope, for our district's sake, all these accusations and, like I said, the defamation of character, the sexual harassment, if people start pursuing this, it's going to cost our district money. And I hope not to cost the district money, but just to put people in their place. It's 2021. we all have to be kind to each other, not sexually harassing each other or defamation of character.
Thank you. Mr. Kemmer?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Ms. Salerno had spoken about as far as getting onto the web, onto the meeting. So we were provided with the webinar ID, which worked for a link. And then we were then subsequently sent the email to passcode into it. And thirdly, it was requesting an additional authorization or authorization to get in. So we had to almost go by like 3 different modes of getting into the meeting. And that's just to clarify what went on with that. And like Sue said, it took us a long time to even get on to the meeting. So for the most part, we missed like the whole beginning as far as being able to participate. End of comment.
Mr. Kemmer, would you be able to supply me with an email with that so I could contact Zoom to make sure I'm explaining it to them correctly?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I'll do that right now.
Mr. Cleaver, this is Rita. I would like to say I also had the same problem, not with this board meeting, but with the executive session link. And my problem turned out to be apparently an update for Zoom came out. I don't know if it was yesterday or today, and I didn't do it. So that has happened to me before where if I didn't put the update in, I couldn't get on. So it's another thing for everybody to check. I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying that was the case on my end.
Thank you. Ms. Salerno?
I'm sorry, I forgot to say also, in the very beginning of this, I was on by telephone. When you're on by telephone, you can't raise your hand because on your end, who's ever in charge has everybody muted. So you may have to unmute everybody if you have people on by telephone. So if someone has something to say, that's how they can say it. But if we're not on unmute from your end, if you're calling in, you can't say anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sue, would you like to ask me specific questions that I can answer for you related to the right to know requests and some of the information regarding the process to which your government agency has a responsibility to create policy, discuss problems that happen within the district to ensure they don't happen again, and to investigate matters that are happening within our district so that the public, and definitely privacy maintained, can review what took place so we can take corrective actions as your government officials with oversight so that they don't happen again, because we do have repeated issues within our district. And that is something that we definitely want to correct for the protect the students and save the community. If you have a specific question, I'd be glad to answer that as your public official in a government meeting.
Mr. Bradley, just for clarification, booster clubs are not affiliated with the district, and you do not have the authority to.
I agree. That's why that's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. You are 100% correct. The right to know request was seeking the records when those private entities lobby their government for things or provide their government with things. So it was only the emails received by the government agency that become right to know requests. The fact that you're testifying that the right to know officer or the agency sought these records from those groups, they should ignore that, tell them to go pound sand. You guys are a government agency, and NAACP versus Board of Education says you can affiliate with whoever you want, and this government agency has no right to your privacy. They shouldn't have even asked any of those groups, but the records that were provided to the agency are of public record, and those are available under the right to know request. And it is those records that are important for a board member to make an informed decision. The same way it's important for the board to review why were those kids not supervised and what policies did we have that allowed that to happen to make sure it doesn't happen. And when it comes to Mr. Fisher, that confessed to things that he did, which I agree, he can move forward in his life, but it was those actions. If you'd like to use a code name for it, right? That's fine. But the reality is those things did occur. The board did take action on some of those things. I think some of that judgment needs to be reviewed by the community to make sure that they can hire moral board people, because we have a lot of immorality taking place within this board. When you have a government agency like the Auditor General stating that this board is
Okay,
not
Mr.
following
Bradley,
the law,
thank you very much for
not
your
following
comment.
the law,
Is there
not
any other
repeatedly
comment
not
from the
following the
public
law,
on
like
any item,
Larry doesn't
Mr.
do,
Weaver?
and Miss Bowman and
There
David
are
Kraus and these
none,
other
Mr.
people,
Stern.
as
Well,
I
then
named
let them
them
speak.
in
We
the
heard
Auditor
enough of
General's
his
report,
rhetoric. Thank you.
that they shut it all up. There you go. Nice public meeting, Larry. Good job. I'll do it on YouTube. Have a nice day.
Okay, I see Barb hand up, but I believe she had
Yes,
actually had the
yes, I
opportunity
do
to
not
speak.
see any new individual. I'm not sure. There's no other new individuals that have not had an opportunity to speak.
Ask her if she has other comments. She's allowed to make them.
Let's see.
You do have one phone caller in. You should ask them because apparently they do not have the ability to do that. If they want to raise their hand, they can't. So you
Ms.
just say
Bose,
don't
I'm
talk.
sorry, is this same thing? Is
Okay,
this from before? I'm sorry if it is.
no,
Okay.
it's just Sue Salerno was allowed to comment a second time. She was allowed to comment after Fred. And I was just checking to see if I would be allowed, but then I heard I had already commented. You can't pick and choose. You're either going to do one across the board or you're
Ms.
going
Bose, your
to
hand is
allow-
raised and you have the opportunity to speak.
Yes, but in previous meetings, I have not. I just want to say it's nice to have a second chance to comment should you hear it. Should you hear something that someone else said. I heard from a number of people who had issues getting onto the meeting. And it would be nice if perhaps Zoom could send out or put when you go to enter the meeting that there's been an update and you need to download it. Perhaps they should be more transparent with that because, you know, sometimes you don't know.
Okay, Mr. Stern, no other comment?
We'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Need a first and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
First by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Holland. Thank you, everyone, for participating and have a pleasant evening.